Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, idiot, and loin streamer, and today I am joined with your favorite comic book critic and artist.
Hi, it's me. It's Monty again, and wow, it's good to be back so soon. Man, I'm having a lot of fun doing these things with you. I really am, and I can't wait to do more. Hopefully, there will be better ones instead of the bad ones we keep
I
fucking
mean,
finding next to Mary
we got
Sue.
Mary
Everyone,
Sue. Well, we're gonna be
yeah,
branching out. We got a lot of different things. So, but
we do, we
we got a lot
do.
of different comics that we are preparing to read as soon as they come in, and some that are already in. But you probably know why we're here because of the thumbnail on the video. But Monty has joined me today because we're going over Alphacore by Chuck Dixon, which is the first not ISOM related comic in the Rippaverse. And since we did ISOM 1 and 2, and then we're going to do 3 to finish the arc of that first storyline, because that's how you make, that's a policy of mine, is I try to finish an arc so I
Yeah,
can see what the author tried to do from beginning to end
I
of
think
at
that's
least
fair
something.
too.
Because
That way you
sometimes,
get more context, right? Like you just
yeah,
like, oh, instead of leaving some stuff, like if I don't like it and I stop and there's like a bunch of other things that come after that, I'm just like, it's just not for me and I'm not going to
mhm.
continue reading it. But like if you've already dedicated and read one, two, like, and it's going to end with the third act here, so to speak, you kind of owe it to yourself to finish it too, and the author as well, to see what they were going for, to see how everything lines up, exactly what you were saying.
Or to see if
So I
something
think,
else makes more sense. Because
yeah,
reading Nightbane after Lightlark actually makes some of the things in Lightlark make more sense. Like
right.
Isla being a freaking psychopath and not seeing anything when she kills a bunch of people, because she had those visions in Nightbane that were actually her memories of bad things that she did. So then you look back at her murderous actions in the first book where she doesn't remember she did those things, and now her callousness makes a lot more sense.
Yep, you're right.
And so
Actually, you're right.
yeah, so I like to see a story through, see if a character grows, see if things from the previous thing, elements that have not been explained or were not resolved, get resolved by the end. I know that I do that. Joey has the same issue where she's kind of a big problem in the first book, that a lot of people really don't like her because she's kind of a
You're like, what's wrong with her? Somebody slap
she's
her quick.
but
Like,
that's a story arc where she goes from really bad to tolerable. So I try to give other authors that benefit. So we'll be reading the rest of that. And then we wanted to see if there were improvements or changes, stuff that made more sense when bringing in other books. So then we're looking at Alphacore.
oh yes.
That's why we are here today. But
Yeah.
before we get started, just a couple of things. One, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. The number one way to be featured is through Lamoy, the monthly prompt writing contest, where I give you a prompt. You write a short story using that prompt, and on the first Monday video of the month, we bask in your creativity. The second way to be featured is if you are an indie author and you have a book out or a book that is coming out. If you submit your first chapter and your cover, they'll be read here on the channel at a random interval to hopefully help your readers find your work. The third thing is, if you would like to check out any of my books, you can get them anywhere that you enjoy getting books from, including the local libraries upon request. And do you have anything to add to that, Monty?
I mean, you can go to my Instagram. It's Gallneth underscore, and that's basically where I sort of post my art. And you can find me on Twitter at Gallneth. I don't have a huge social media presence. I'm not overly fond of social media. I just don't got a lot to say no more, I guess, when it comes to like putting my opinion out there. You know, ironically, as I'm saying this, doing a video with you, but I'm kind of a hermit at this point in my life, and it's probably gonna have to change at some point if I'm gonna have to, I'm gonna promote Numina at some point to market it to the best of my ability. But I'm no marketer. I may be extroverted, but I am not a marketer. Like I'm just not
That's
my
a
talent.
skill. Okay, it is.
That is a skill. So, but you can find me there and follow me there if you want. But other than that, like, join the Discord server. You see more of me there if you want to join. I talk a lot, sometimes, and we share art and funny stories, and we have a very eclectic crew of people over there. And I think those who are a little tired of being in spaces that are kind of dominated in biases in either which way, We're a group of people that are all very different. Some of us agree with each other, some of us don't, but we all live in harmony despite that. And I think that should be promoted more. I think that should be the standard more than it is nowadays. And so I'm really appreciate it. And I'm also just happy to be here.
So, Alphacore, do you have any opening thoughts?
Actually, I do. I do have some opening thoughts. We were discussing this in the server, and I, on the opening pages of Alphacore, it showcases who worked on this book. And if you go through, it is in the Discord thing, and it's 14 people worked on this book. 14 people. There's the names down here that I can't fucking pronounce. The inkers, and then the two colorists, Michael Bartolo and Thago Dalballo. I can't say. I'm sorry, dude, if I mess your name up. My bad. But then you see, Eric Weathers, the letterer, Alan Ford, copy editor, Carol Brown, Andrew Rodriguez, assistant editors, and then, of course, Eric July himself, editor-in-chief. That is 14 people who worked on this book. And there is no excuse for how much of a shit show this is. There is no excuse. The pacing was terrible. The coloring was awful. No offense to the colorists. The action scenes, unless they were the money shots, looked terrible. The dialogue, static. Just as bad, maybe worse than, actually I think it's worse than Isam's dialogue. The inconsistencies with the artwork, even the small things to the big things, like how Valdez sometimes has gloves on her hands, sometimes has one glove on her hand, and then sometimes has no gloves on her hands.
All in the same scene.
The quality drops and gets better sometimes, but it's not consistent. Everything about this fucking product is not consistent. And for 14 people to have worked on it, they need to be goddamn fired. Because they're not doing their jobs.
Yeah, there's no excuse for this to be the mess that it is with 14 people working on it, because the dialogue and the story should be better since that's all you had to focus on. I've seen web comics written and drawn by one person that have much more consistency in general than this has.
Yeah.
If you've got a bunch of different people that are doing the coloring and the inking, then you need to make sure that they ink and color in the same way so it's not changing from page to page. Like one of the things that came up when we were talking about Marked, back when we read Marked, was people were saying how they could tell when it was the mom writing versus the daughter writing. If you're going to collaboratively write, or create together, you need to figure out a way to merge your styles to minimize when it's you or somebody else.
Yeah. Don't make it so obvious, but you can definitely tell more than one person worked on this book because nobody seemed to be in sync with each other at all. I don't know what happened over there. I don't know if they were rushed or, that's the argument that's been going around. Well, it comes out on time. Yeah, like, I fucking don't care. I would rather something take several months to finish and be organized and done correctly, or at least look nice, than it to be pushed on me because you promised people that this is the date it would come out at.
It's a freaking joke to tell me, oh, you should like this because it came out when I told you it was going to come out. I don't have to like it because you rushed it out. It's a conveyor belt job of everybody throwing in a piece of paper that they worked on in order to finish it because you said you would get it done in an unreasonable amount of time. It's the same thing that we constantly see being trashed on in the gaming industry, where they're overworking their devs because the shareholder said, we're going to get this out. We want to make that money. So then crack the whip on all of the game devs and everyone working on this. And then they're going to get trash talked because you rushed the thing and didn't bother to QC it because you're more focused on making money than giving your consumers or your readers or your players an enjoyable experience. The only thing memorable about this book is how bad it is.
That's absolutely, that was The hell yes, the fuck yes, that is the only thing memorable about it. And not only that, it still reminds me of the argument, well, it made a lot of money. It's the same thing that I see when someone decides that they say that this book is good because it's on the bestsellers list, when everybody who knows that the bestseller list has not meant anything for 20 years. Okay, it doesn't mean anything. Just because it sold a lot of copies does not mean that is indicative of the quality in that book. All right, for God's sake, you could look at the industry right now and what's selling, what's top selling. It's a bunch of crap.
Not to mention, since Avery's huge thing is respect versus disrespect, if you were to give Avery this book, he would kick your ass because of how disrespectful it is to give this to a customer and expect them to respect you for it.
I know, like I am just blown away. And I was a little hopeful because Chuck Dixon is an industry veteran. But then we kind of started to think, well, maybe either Chuck Dixon is just a shitty writer or Chuck Dixon was like, this is a check.
And I'm sorry, like everybody has crappy books. It happens to the best of writers. But you are going to be known and remembered for your more recent projects. And a lot of people are being introduced to you through this project and are not going to want to look at anything else you may have done in the past because this is so trash.
Oh yeah. You gotta be careful when you do that. But like honestly, I don't know if I've read any of Chuck. Like I'm not a comic book reader, and a lot of people might take that as like me. Oh well, what business do you have reading this? I'm a story connoisseur. I love stories regardless of the format they come in, and stories have a particular way that they are told, and you could tell when one is good and one is not. Writing is writing, right? You know, it's like you can tell when something is bad, and you can tell when something is good, or you can tell when something is just underdeveloped. Mm-hmm. And this is not something that was underdeveloped. This is, I mean, obviously it's underdeveloped, but it wasn't really thought about.
Well, the two big differences for me between the two of underdeveloped versus bad is ISOM 1 was underdeveloped. This is bad. And it uses its flashy pages because all of the pages, the art style of it for me, were also overdeveloped to be maximally just filling the page with as much as it possibly could.
Cool stuff.
Whether you want to call it razzle dazzle or if you want to call it overstimulation. Like if you think back to when we talked about Mary Sue, there were so many panels in that book that were without dialogue, that were simple, that they had the focal point of here is the castle or here is them walking on the deck with the stars in the background, and all you needed to see was Mary and Songbird walking together. Or you had Mary in front of the window that looked out into the ocean as she was all alone in her godfather's house. Like you had all of these things that were just panels, multiple panels after one another with zero text that were very quiet and that were focused on telling the story visually. But what Alphacore did was that it stuffed so much stuff into every single picture that there was nothing special about any of them.
No, it's not anything that I hadn't seen before. The concept is not new, obviously. Granted, I know that we talked about the other day what makes good fiction good, and you had mentioned a lot of it helps when you're good at problem solving, but also when you embrace and understand what inspired you to create what you did, right? Any book writer, comic writer, arts, whatever you want to have, you can see the amalgamation of this tapestry of all the things that inspired them converging into one thing that is its own unique identity. And you can see that love transferred into the things that we create. The things that inspire you always stick with you, whether it be from life or from something you read or watched. And the same thing applies for, when you make these comics, and why some of these comics in the past were so great isn't because they did cool shit. It's because they understood the concepts that they were trying to convey, and they respected the characters that were in those stories enough to take them seriously. And this book does not fucking do that. There is nothing in this that looks like it was inspired by anything. It is just a ripoff of something else that was done better, drawn better, colored better, and told better. Just better by a greater creator.
And I can't help but think that is just part of the culture of the company, because it's the culture of a bunch of people that kind of circle that group where they don't say, we're going to make something great. I'm going to make ISOM and it is going to just be great. It is going to be the comic that defines my generation, or a comic that defines my generation. It's not like that. They go, I want to make Star Wars, but better. I want to make Superman, but better. It's never, I'm going to make my story and give it to you. Like, what have we said with freaking Bill Cassidy? The Legend of Bill Cassidy isn't trying to be anything but the Legend of Bill Cassidy, and it will be a legend.
Yeah, like I fully believe that.
So what is ISOM and Alphacore trying to do? What are they trying to do? They're trying to be Marvel, but better.
Yeah, so that's all it is. It's just a money machine.
So it doesn't understand what the point of any of those properties was, and it doesn't respect the characters. And you can tell by Avery being written out of his own comic, and then there being absolutely no meat to freaking Alphacore.
And no mention of Avery.
There is so little meat to Alphacore that it has to change the focus of the story, like every 1 to 5 pages. And I kid you not, sometimes you get one page that is a scene, and then they switch scenes to another scene. And
oh my God, I thought I had like, I was looking through it, and I was like, I feel like I'm missing pages.
Yeah, because some of the pages, like you get to like halfway point, a little bit after halfway point, and it's like scene with one person for one page, oh, switch to other scene, oh, switch to other scene, oh, switch to other scene, like different scenes for every page for like 5, 6, 7 pages. And it feels like there's no coherency.
There's not.
And maybe it's trying to do a montage, but it failed at doing a montage.
But here's the thing, you know, like I go back to that fucking mission statement, collage, you know, I go back to that fucking mission statement from, you know, Eric, you know, the Rippaverse ethic, a comprehensive timeline, because we value canon and continuity. It's essential that you're able to follow the timeline as these characters grow. What fucking timeline?
Oh my gosh. Speaking of timeline and continuity and Avery not being in this, my assumption, and I have no idea, but my assumption on this is that it takes place before ISOM.
That's what I'm thinking too. I can only assume that.
But we don't have any evidence of anything. But imagine if this is before Avery even tried to be a superhero the first time. And when you get to like the climactic area where that ship is like flying, like we'll get there. You guys will know what we're talking about when we get to the synopsis here in a second. But imagine if during that moment, and you had Braxwell saving those people from that building. Imagine, or in the crowd there once they stop the building. Imagine Avery is in that crowd or sees some of this going down, and he goes, I want to do that job. And then that gives us an idea as to why he even became a superhero later.
Yeah.
Because he was inspired by these people. And it could have just been that little tiny thing of that little sliver that would have shown us Avery somewhere, that would have connected it to Avery.
Yeah, and that's what frustrates me, is that Avery and Yara, I can't believe it, but it's true, were not mentioned one time in this, despite the fact that Alphacore and Yara were all over Avery's book. And you said that, you know, Avery was getting written out of his own book, and he was.
Yeah, and that's why I think that this takes place before ISOM, is because Avery and Yaira are not in it. And because obviously at the beginning of ISOM, the city already has a relationship with Yaira. So if she doesn't have a relationship with the city yet in this book, and there is no focus, no discussion on her whatsoever, and it's the building of the headquarters for the Alphacore, then this is probably the beginning of their story, whereas ISOM, they're somewhat established. But we have no idea how far established.
I don't know anything, because also I'm so, what the fuck is this story about? Like, I know all of this is supposedly supposed to converge at some point, but I don't know what the direction is. I don't know what the overall end goal is supposed to be. That is how almost every single fucking story works, even in Slice of Life. There is a goal to achieve. In the long, especially in series, there's always an overarching narrative. There's always an overarching plot. You may have the little plots in between all that get wrapped up, or the main central story of like one book, but there's still that overarching plot that's going to propel you over into the second book and then the third book until you finally get to your end goal. Where is that? What is the purpose and point of these people? They're not even entertaining to read about. And we haven't even gotten into the synopsis yet. I'm fucking offended, right? Like, I'm offended. I don't care. Yes, I'm triggered. I fucking get triggered by bullshit, all right? Like,
So before we, as like a preface, before we get into the synopsis, because I want to give this comparison for the people watching to keep this in their mind as we go through the synopsis. So first off, if you haven't watched our discussion about George Alexopoulos's book, comics, Mary Sue, go watch that after this. And I bring that up because that is 5 issues. It's about 120 pages. So it's about as long as this. It's a little longer than ISOM 1. And I want to bring that up because in those 120, 130 pages, you know who Mary is. And each of and obviously that's 5 issues. So you've got little comic arcs in each of those where Mary has something delivered to her, like what she has to do, a mission. We know what her goal is, and then she goes to try and accomplish it, and or gets interrupted. So after those 5 issues of Mary Sue, she has stopped some space pirates. So we know that she is somewhat of a contractor for stopping bad guys. Then she is sent to a planet to go and get stuff from the mermaid people that her grandfather had made connections with. And then she is also bothering her godfather about her parents because she doesn't know who her parents are and she wants to know where they are. And then she finds a hint of her parents in that underwater laboratory because her godfather knew her parents. And we know that that's where the story is going when it ends. So like, in 130 pages, as long as Alphacore is about the same length, we have direction that pushes the story. We have full character. We have 3 or 4 mini arcs because issues 1 and 2 basically share the story on that cruise ship.
Yes, they do. And also, it doesn't feel like you're reading 130 pages.
No, it doesn't.
You breeze right through it. But with Alphacore, I fucking wanted to rip my eyes out of my sockets. Like, the only thing that kept me going was to talk about it with you because it needs to be discussed because I know that nobody's going to be fucking honest about it and it needs to be talked about honestly. I'm fed up with this bullshit. Like, for real.
So then in the thing is with the comparison to Mary Sue and this, one, George does not get enough recognition for that comic.
No,
so
he doesn't.
Go and read it.
It's great.
Support him. It's great. But number 2 is if in that comic, I can give you a full structure and tell you exactly where that story is going and who Mary is and what her relationship is. And like, she even goes through a miniature character moment in that where she, has that thing she says in the beginning where we're all going to be dead when stuff sucks anyway. And then later she's talking to Nakari and he's talking about leaving behind a legacy, something better for the people that come next, even if you never get to see it. And that makes her rethink what she said in the first issue.
Yeah.
You get to see her have character reflections in a single 120 pages. In this, what do you have? You have nothing. You have 120 pages, however much this is, 100 pages, 110 pages, whatever this is.
I don't know. It's just
spread between like 15 different characters with 4 sets of bad guys.
Oh man,
it was literally nothing from this.
No, you don't. Like, there's nothing. And then of course, like all the Alphacore characters, the only one that's enjoyable is Braxwell because Braxwell doesn't say anything.
So we're gonna get into the synopsis. Yeah, you guys can see where the story goes, where it doesn't go, and then go and let us know what you think in the comments down below. But getting into it, it opens with a robbery. It looked like a robbery. Maybe it was. I thought it was a robbery because he wasn't just doing something.
No, he wasn't. He's just standing outside the bank
with a gun at this woman's head, saying that if the badges don't back off, he'll shoot.
It is total fucking chaos out here. Okay,
so
dude, they have the whole enchilada there, right? They got the police, bomb squad, there's a tank, there's a chopper.
There are snipers on the ground.
Snipers on the ground.
You got skyscrapers and balconies everywhere, and then you got your freaking snipers on the ground with a helicopter circling near the ground.
But at first,
this guy is a random robber. You get the idea. The way that it is set up is he's not a superhero. He doesn't look like he's got a bomb vest on him when it opens, which he's
more like a tactical vest.
He's got a bomb. He's wearing a bomb. But like, if he is wearing a bomb, why do you have the entire squad of the entire city here to deal with what looks like a robber or a dude with a bomb? If you know that he's got a bomb, that's just going to aggravate him. You're just making a bigger liability.
Exactly, especially whenever it's like, oh, we'll get there, but oh my god. Like, I sat there, I'm like, this is overkill.
and it's
because I didn't realize
not,
he had a bomb.
not just, well, you don't know that he has a bomb until like
No,
later,
I didn't
which
realize.
is
Yeah, I
why
didn't
it just
realize
looks
it.
like he's just robbing a store. And then they've got
Yeah.
the cavalry in. They have the entire army of freaking segregated Texas.
Yep, they have the
in
whole
this
fucking
just
enchilada
for
there,
this
man.
stupid robber. And they're like, nobody's got to die today. The dude is like, I'm ready to die. But
Man,
okay, so nobody is ready. Nobody's got to die today. But you got snipers and a copter and a tank and like 100
I can't get over the tank. That was fucking hilarious. The tank and the chopper especially. I was like, because again, I didn't realize he had a bomb on him until it was like another, the next page. I was like, okay, that mildly makes sense, but then I saw something that really pissed me off. Okay, so
Alphacore guy swoops in. His name is Brian Solaris. I may call him Alphacore Man because it's just, I wrote his name as Alphacore Man here a while.
Named Brian.
But so he swoops in and nabs the robber. The guy is shooting into Alphacore Man's chest, and it looks like it's reflecting off of his chest because he's somewhat of a Man of Steel, obviously a Superman knockoff a bit. Where the bullets are going, I have no idea. It would have been funny. Oh my gosh, it would have been funny if the guy like shot Alphacore Man
and then the bullets started ricocheting
off and went into like the copter over there.
And the whole fucking thing goes to hell and back. Yes.
Yeah, then I could get the cop on the ground's anger, and he's like, what are you freaking doing here? Nobody called you. Because it's just like half of the team just got taken out by the bullets ricocheting off of
everything's dead. Like he's like, this is why we shouldn't have called you in, you son of a bitch. Okay, so I'm gonna post. No, they didn't. Excuse me, I misspoke. But I'm gonna send you some pictures real quick so we can show you what. And start with the bottom one first if you can, because that's gonna show you the fucking chaos that's going on for one guy. Okay. So the first one, obviously, like they have like, again, the whole enchilada, right? You got the cops, you got the chopper. There's a guy hanging out of the chopper. There's the tanks over here. I'm guessing that's bomb squad. There's the snipers. And then there's this guy saying, nobody's got to die today. Okay. And so then Brian comes in and he swoops him up. All right. So I'm going to show you something. So when Brian gets him, he flies up. And so right down here, you can see this is the chaos. There's the police lights. It's red and blue. No one's fooling anybody here. Those are not paracels. But over here, there's a hotel and a pool, right? So this is the area. It's a hotel and a pool. And there's all this chaos going down here. This is an example of the cause without the effect. It was something I picked up on. All right, so whenever Brian is having this tussle, like an unfair fight, really, he removes the bomb from him, chucks that thing, all the way away from the people. It blows up, and then he throws the bomb guy into the water. And there are people hanging out, chilling out, like nothing is happening. No one is. You're mean to tell me that all this nonsense is going on down below and nobody's looking over the building to see what the fuck's going on? Do you know how loud a chopper is when it's real close to you? Do you know how loud the engines are on some of these like vehicles? There's a guy speaking off of his his vest mic, which has probably amplified his voice, and the voices will echo and carry and bounce off the buildings around him. So this guy has a bomb on his freaking body, and nobody has evacuated these people from the area?
Yep.
Nobody has made an attempt to do this? Like, oh my God.
They called in all of the cavalry, and they've left everybody in the freaking buildings that are right there, that if the bomb went off, it would level everything and all of these people would die. Not only that, they got snipers, and they've got all of these balconies that they could be using with the snipers, and there's nobody on any of them.
No, at least not the people, but it's like right near his casino and the casino's hotel. And when he gets thrown in the water, everyone's just chilling, just like it's a normal day, like nothing's happening. And the same thing kind of happened with Ice Tom, though I think Ice Tom can kind of get away with it, which is where the police are trying to stop Yara because she's shown up to town, and then Club Mur is literally said to be half a mile down the road from where all this chaos is happening. And yet it's like there's nothing going on. A cause without effect. So like there's all this stuff going on. You mean to tell me that like at least nobody's looking over the building to see what's going on? Really? Nobody?
Yeah,
I
people
mean,
can't freaking just drive past somebody on the shoulder on the highway. There is no way that nobody is looking over the edge here.
no. At all. Like you would be hearing this. Like you would be hearing this. This would be a shit show, and everyone would be trying to watch it since they've clearly not evacuated anybody because they know he's got a bomb. And then the problem is, like, later on, Brian says that, what the hell did you put in this, like C4 or something else? Because like car alarms went off, it was so powerful. So this thing's already that powerful. What if it actually did go off and blew everyone to smithereens? You're liable for people's lives because you didn't evacuate the building or any area. Excuse me. I just that whole freaking scene is just absurdity. It was overkill. This is an example of like, you need to lower your stakes, dude. Like this is too much. Like,
and there's even more reason why the stakes should have been lower. We'll get to that as we get through the rest of this scene. So Alphacore Man throws that bomb into the sky and it explodes. And the dude, the robber guy, is actually surprised that it exploded because apparently it wasn't supposed to be a live vest. It was just supposed to be a prop vest.
Oh my God, yeah.
Alphacore Man lands. I told you I was going to call him Alphacore Man because that's just what my notes say.
It's
We learned that his
okay.
name is Solari or Solaris. And he goes to talk to the police captain who's there saying that this is over with and you're welcome for fixing that for you. And the police captain isn't happy about it because Solari is only supposed to come to scenes where he has been called specifically. Think of the Alphacore kind of like SWAT, except for accepts.
Yeah. I think one of the things that really annoyed me about this, like, you know, it's just another one of these things where it's like, you know, like you said, he removes the bomb and stuff like that. Like, and I said, like, this scene just irritates me because I've seen it so many times in comics and I've seen it done so much better. But that's where like the government has sanctioned people with superpowers to keep eyes on their whereabouts, but only need them for specific things. In this case, in Alphacore's case, to deal with situations related to XFs. You know, fight fire with fire sort of thing going on. So like Brian flies down to hand over the guy and the authorities just promptly fucking scold him. And they try to make, well, we had this in the bag. I'm like, are you sure?
Half of freaking the Texas Army was here.
Yeah, everybody was fucking here. Are you sure for one dude? Yeah, right.
Now, see, the problem with this whole thing is that the situation was so extreme already. You got half of the freaking army there. You got this dude with a bomb, which shows that the police department was failing. So then Brian wasn't actually out of line by helping here because they were clearly over their heads. Now, and that guy was a special case. He wasn't just some petty thief. Now, if he was some like stupid teenager who had just maybe stolen some candy bars from a corner store or something, and the owner of the corner store was like, hey, get back here with those. And then Brian just whoosh, and it's a way overreaction to what was just a juvenile mischief, then they could make a better argument that, hey, regular people are afraid that you are going to show up and break their doors down because here he is going after a kid who did something stupid and being way overpowered. But instead, we got this insane thing with a bomb where obviously the cops can't handle it with all of their firepower. And Brian is literally saving who knows how many lives, since probably none of those buildings in the surrounding area were evacuated.
Yeah, none. And exactly. It's just meant to make him look like he's in the right. But even if you wanted to go like an intense route, you could still lower the scenes. Like maybe actually have the cops handling the situation for once. Like again, I've seen this so many times where the police say they had the situation under control when they very clearly didn't, and then get mad or butthurt over it whenever an outside source, like literally in this case, swoops in to solve the problem for them. You know, say they've managed to like calm the man down and he's about to willingly go into custody with them. After the standoff, he's persisted for however long. Then out of nowhere, Brian, Alphacore Man, comes in, snatches the bomber off the ground as as a show of power, then throws the bomb into the air where it blows up and it rattles the buildings and it sets off cars alarms, and now people are in a frenzy. And then you can have the guy say, we didn't call you, we didn't need you, you could have killed somebody with this bullshit. Like, I mean, you really, you know, like, even still, like, they don't have to be that insane or that intense. Like, actually be okay with having your characters do something dumb for once. You know, like, throughout this whole comic, Brian Solari, the Alphacore man, is a pompous ass. Like, he's supposed to be quippy, but it's just not funny. So, like, it's absurd. Like, you know, exactly. Like, this lower the stakes, and like, that would make the more intense moments a lot more worth it, in my opinion. That's what I think. You know, he's just like bored superhero not getting to do anything because maybe the cops do have it under control there in Floor Spark.
Yep. So after he gets lectured, the guy is like, get the frick out of here. You know the rules. And so Solari flies off looking all upset because he was just lectured by the guy. And
called him Flyboy.
And again, this just, it looks like using elements that people are familiar with, because like in X-Men, they're considered, you know, everybody is afraid of the mutants. And so there kind of is an oppressed class kind of idea going on there, because everybody wants to kill the mutants or, you know, put them in camps or something because they're afraid of them. But there is a reason that it shows in the way that these people respond. There is no fear with this captain, with Solari. There is nothing that signifies why he should both be like, well, we're all afraid of you, but also be acting so much of a dick to the level that he is. Because it kind of shows you're not really afraid. If that attitude is going to do anything for somebody super powerful, it's going to turn them into a villain because they're already being mistreated when they're not even doing anything.
Yeah, they've already got an ego. And so, like, it's going to go against their ego and they're going to lose it, man. Like, they're going to get more bitter and more resentful. And then they're going to think, well, why the fuck am I even doing this? Like, I can do what I want. I'm powerful. These people aren't. Like, you know, you got to be careful how you talk to these people. You know, and again, it's
something like that.
Something like that. And again, it's like, I've, again, seen it before. It's like what you just said. They takes elements from certain comics, like X-Men, for example. The reason why the X-Men are feared, obviously, because anybody can be a mutant. Where I heard it once put was that, like, rather than get their powers by misfortune, science, extraterrestrial forces, or not even from this planet, they were naturally born with them, and that scares people because that makes them no longer the top of the food chain. Whereas the other superheroes are okay because a lot of them are sort of like not very many, I guess. I mean, when I'm thinking of like Marvel for one thing, and I don't have like the broadest scope of Marvel except for the X-Men and the Avengers, and so I'm thinking there's not that many superheroes in the Avengers and stuff like that, and so like they don't got to worry about that. They know who these people are. With the mutants, they don't know. Anybody can be one. Anybody can be one, and they have their powers naturally. So that's why a lot of the people like want to have it. It makes sense for that. For them to, you know, be feared and oppressed by people, rather than this is just something that's like, yeah, like, obviously, okay, you know, I've seen that one before.
Yeah, so again, if you're going to do something, you have to show the logic or the reason in why people behave the way that they do through the ways that they are responding. So if he's going to be so afraid of people that he acts out of aggression, then Captain needs to respond to Solari in a different way if he wants to be overbearing. But trying to mix overbearing and you're a freak, but also everybody is afraid of you doesn't really work for this introduction. It just ends up almost Gary suing Alphacore guy.
Actually,
where he's both the strongest and the most oppressed.
Yep. But he's not acting like a victim. I'm just like, it's in the narration.
Yes, he is. Look at how he's crying as he flies away.
He likes annoy. He's crying away.
I know. I was exaggerating when I said crying, but he was pouting as he flew away.
He was pouting. That was so fucking funny, too. I knew he wasn't supposed to be there, but the way it's set up, it's like, obviously he needed to be there because nobody was fucking handling the situation at all.
Oh, and that's another thing. That was an issue that ISOM had as well, where it didn't take time to like slow itself down, which is also stupid since this book felt like it needed pages, which is why it kept switching between people. It didn't have enough story, but you could have literally just had extended the scene and have Brian fly in, stop next to the captain, be like, hey, I heard the noise like 50 miles away. Not really, but, you know, exaggerate because it's so much stuff.
Yeah.
And have him be like, what the heck is going on? And then he sees the robber over there and he's like, do you need help? And then the captain is like, no, get out of here. We didn't call you. And then Brian deliberately ignores that order and goes in and ends it.
Yeah.
Like, you could have extended that scene and actually shown their personalities, the clashing, the power struggle, Brian wanting to do the right thing and be helpful when he sees this going on, and the captain wanting to save face and have it be his job. Like, you could have built so much more and actually set up a dynamic. But instead, it just wanted to go for the quick. And then I have no idea why it rushed it, other than it feels that they didn't care.
I don't think they cared. I think they just wanted to get it out there. I actually don't really even think that these characters are well designed regardless. Like, I've seen them before. He even kind of looks like Superman. Just he's got a fucking chin that's crazy big.
Switch over to a man and a woman talking. The guy, these are the two from the club scene back in ISOM 1. And the guy is watching the news about the robbery. They're very vague about what is happening. And it felt like a poor attempt at suspense to me, because it felt like it was hiding information from the readers instead of actually just having these characters talk.
Yeah, that's why it feels like a movie rather than it was like a comic.
And I feel like I see this issue so much where writers forget that you can create tension and suspense through when is the bomb going to explode. You don't have to keep it hidden that somebody planted a bomb. If the reader knows that there is a bomb, like, not saying a bomb specifically, but giving an example of danger, the reader can know that something bad is brewing. And so then the tension comes from, when is it going to go off, and will the good guy get there in time? But instead, a lot of authors, and Grady Hendrix freaking did this in his book with the
yes, he did.
Where it's just like they hide information from you thinking that the mystery is going to cause tension, but it is just cheap and annoying. And it's dumb. It's poor writing is what it is.
It really is.
And it's also a way to like try to skirt around actually having to develop anything, because you don't have your bad guy characters commit to what it is they're doing. They don't even know why they're in this scene.
No, they don't. It's just, it's literally, it's so weird. It's like, well, I'm going to like take care of it. Like, you know, and she comes in and she's like, what are you doing? Like, you're causing a ruckus. And it's really funny that, you know, throughout this comic, like, or this product, really, there's this idea of how the public sees Alphacore as not necessarily a good thing. But literally when Lillian, and that's her name, the woman, shows the video footage from the live newscasting that his plan didn't exactly go off without a hitch. And the newscaster is like, and thanks to Alphacore, a potential disaster was averted this morning, as, you know, and it cuts off. So it sounds like there's, the public seems to be okay with Alphacore, at least, because I don't actually see the public rallying against Alphacore. I mostly just saw that from what the guy was saying. Flynn is the officer's name who like scolded Brian. Well, then after Brian got like scolded by him, it's like the only people who seem to be irritated that Alphacore is involving themselves in this are the people who are like the police. And then later on there's this lawyer character that comes up, and we'll get to him, but like I don't really even understand it.
See, like, and then you've got extras. This isn't thought through. Like, the author was writing the very first things that he thought of, where it was, the woman says, so you hired that guy to explode in the vault alive? How long until they come with a warrant for you? But it's, so if he was there with the bomb vest to explode a vault, why wasn't he holding somebody up in the bank? Why was he outside of the bank?
Yeah, I don't get that either. Like, did he just like willy-nilly walk in? Like, I have no clue. I don't know. I really literally doesn't make that, it doesn't make sense at all when you like start talking about it. And I didn't really even understand what was going on, other than he was trying to get rid of something that he didn't want other people to find out that he had. And I don't know if that means that they were already being investigated and that he needed a means to get rid of this. I'm just like, why not just sit? I don't know. It's stupid.
Also, I don't have this picture anywhere else, so it's in here because I just, the frick is this face?
Oh my gosh.
This is literally her when she's like, when are they going to come for you with a warrant? So is this supposed to be a concerned face? Because what is this?
I don't. It's literally all the eyes in this. Everybody, there's no life in anything
And
unless it's a money
so
shot.
many expressions in this book are just nonsensical. They do not match the emotions of the scene. The cross-eyedness or the odd-eyedness of either of them, or the eyes. What is it? A lazy eye. The lazy eyes of a lot of
Wonky.
them destroys any emotional expression any of these characters are supposed to have, and it's not contained to one character having a lazy eye.
No, it's not. It's all of them look like this. All of them look very uncanny. All of their eyes are almost always far apart, and the expressions are like the exaggerated ones. Yeah, sure, you can tell what emotion is being portrayed with the exact. I mean, they're ridiculous looking, but then when the subtle emotions are supposed to be portrayed in a character, it does not register at all. It looks goofy. It looks uncanny. It's like, I don't know what happened, but somebody got to go back to school or get back to studying if they were. I mean, I just think that is, especially if they're going for the superhero look, which obviously they are, which they consider to be the standard. Well, you are not up to standard, buddy, at all.
So that's all that there is to that scene, is you're just seeing that the dude was a failure in whatever the frick he was trying to do, but they're not telling you what he's trying to do. Just try to get into a vault. That's pretty much it. So skip back to Alphacore man Brian as he flies to a floating base in the sky. I know that he's flying, but now I'm wondering how everybody on the base got on the base. Are they all able to fly? Well, we know that's not true because at the very least, Valdez can't fly. And then they've got normal people on there who are just members of the police, the city police. So they can't
Air
fly.
shuttle?
So
I
what
don't know.
the frick is this choice to make it a floating police station? Because there is no benefit to it.
No, there's not. It's just up in there. I don't know if it's meant to like just kind of keep Alphacore out of the way or whatnot, but I'm just like, I feel like you could have like at least accommodated for your superheroes that don't fly and the people that work there, because that's a lot of money in air traffic to keep them going to and from every freaking day. Like, you don't got to worry about freaking Braxton and Brian getting to work on time, but Valdez, I don't know how the fuck she gets there unless they all live there. Then I don't know. But yeah, it's a stupid structural choice that reminds me of something from, again, other comic books, again, greater creators. I would just really like to see somebody do something different with the superhero genre is all I'm saying. I'm tired of this nonsense. You know, there's no logic to it, really, like you said.
And that's what matters the most to me when I'm reading pretty much anything, is you don't have to tell me exactly why things are done, but I should be able to follow a logic in the choices. So then later when you say this is why they did that, it's, oh, I can see why they're behaving that way. I see why they made that choice. But there
Yeah.
is no logic to this being in the sky at the very idea of just maybe 2 or 3 of them can fly and everybody else that works there can't fly.
Yeah. I'm like, man, that must suck going. And it almost looks like it's close to being in orbit, like in outer space. Like, I don't know if it's because the sun was going down, but it's pretty high up there. It's not just you got to get up there, you know, via a helicopter. That looks like you got to get up there via jet. Like, it's high up there. Unless they didn't actually, maybe it's not that, but of course, it's not, again, fully realized well enough to understand what you're looking at.
And this whole thing is super new to the point that it doesn't even have a name yet for it. So Brian gets there and they just start talking about what they want to name the base. So this place is so new. Alphacore has been apparently a thing because they have a reputation already, but they only just got a base. And the base is so new that just after this thing happened with the explodey, he's not asking, hey, so about that bomb thing that happened to you. No, it's, hey, BT Dubs, I was thinking that we could name this Ares, which is Greek for bird's nest.
Eagle nest or
Eagle
something.
nest,
I'm like, why
there
not
you
fucking
go.
call it eagle nest? Like,
Yeah,
do it.
Cares?
Who fucking cares? Just call it eagle nest. Like, that's what the fuck it is. Just call it what it is.
Guess what? If they had actually made that a character moment, it would have been great. Like this guy being like, bro, I got the greatest idea. We can name this place this thing. It's called Eagle's Nest. Isn't that the coolest thing? And Brian is just like, yeah, sure, whatever.
Yeah, just do it, like,
like
whatever.
show him as being the pompous who just doesn't freaking care. because
No, and also
this doesn't give him glory. Naming this thing is not going to give him glory. It's not going to give him attention. Like, let his
no.
character shine and let their interactions shine.
Clearly, Brian is respected because I know Brian was probably a military person because it mentions he was in the military. If you're gonna have the thing flying in the sky, whatever, but like at least have somebody talking about how fucking inconvenient it is. Maybe this is like
Oh
brand
my
new, like you're
gosh.
saying. Like this is like I hate coming here. Like it took me 3 hours to get up here. Like what kind of bullshit is this? Like make it actually
Imagine. Imagine this. So Brian flies in because he's coming back from what he was just doing. And the bird's nest was his idea. He was like, this would be great. We can monitor from on top of the city. I can, Braxwell and I will at least have quick dispensary because we can just fly out from here and just go anywhere. So this was Brian's idea. And he lands into the station. And then you got the techies over there being like, man, can you believe this bullshit? I would rather be in precinct 49 on the ground.
At least I could get to and from work in like an hourly manner.
And then they're like, we got it. It takes me 45 minutes to clear air traffic just to get up here. And in the case of a fire, and freaking, they got me sharing a room with Frank. And do you know how smelly Frank is? Like, give a chance to build the environment on there and how much everybody freaking hates it. And then Brian is over here getting to listen to everybody hate his super cool idea. And then the other guy comes up. Then the other guy comes up and he's like, hey, I got the perfect name for this place, Eagle's Nest. And then, instead of actually being like, whatever, I don't care. Then in that case, you could have been like, thank you. Somebody else thinks my idea is cool.
Great. Also, another thing too, like you could have them like, why is nothing do it? Like, what's going on? Like, how come nobody's gotten to work? Well, it took us like 3 hours to get up here, dude. Like,
So
okay.
there are so many options that could have been built to build character on this thing, and it's just sterile.
It is. It's just sterile. There's like far and few moments. Like there was one that did get a chuckle out of me where, Brian walks in, and he's talking about, I don't know, they're just talking about what happened, I'm supposing. Valdez scolds him and says like, wow, like we're supposed to be getting like support from the crowd, the public, and it's like, what the fuck, dude? Like no one seems to be against it. And they start getting into it, and then eventually it kind of like disperses, and then the woman that was sitting by all of it was like, that was really tense. And this dude goes, well, they don't call it Alphacore for nothing. Like, I thought that was funny. I did get a chuckle out of that, admittedly.
So in the control room, Valdez and another woman are watching the news and are like, Alphacore Man is all over TV from what just happened with the bomb. The two start arguing because Brian thinks that they're doing stupid PR jobs. And then the Alphacore woman, which is Valdez, doesn't like that Alpha Man possibly just screwed over their public image. I don't know how she's saying that they screwed over the public image when everybody on TV is like, hey, he just stopped this bomb threat in this part of the freaking neighborhood with a bunch of high rises.
Like, you're telling me we're getting out of favor or possibly ruining our like image to the public whenever I don't even see the public saying anything negative about them. It's always just people in like these institutions like the police or the military or that lawyer that we run into who's about to come up, by the way. Like but I don't see anybody in terms of like the populace being anti Alphacore or Accept. Like I have not seen that. Not yet.
So on the news, the lady is like, isn't it great that he helped us? And there's a random civil contrarian on there that's like, no, they're superpowered humans and they can bust your doors down and they can take us all. And this is the part you were talking about because both Ingrid Valdez and Brian are both angry, and the captain over there tells Ingrid to go and drink tea to calm down and tells Brian to go and punch things to calm down. And the remaining support staff just sit there and say that it's tense, as you said.
But yeah, like it's not really building to anything. It's all very like static and sterile, like you mentioned, and it's like there's stuff that's missing. It feels so empty. Like it's like, imagine like you know how like think of talking into a lead pipe and then you can hear how echoey your voice is, and it feels like there's like space missing. Like that's just what this feels like to me. I know that's a weird description, but it's also echoey and hollow. Like I don't know why I attribute it to that, but it's strange. Just like there's things that are just missing. It just feels sterile.
That thing with the tension also could have been built up so much more, which would have built up, made it given more characterization and more separation. Like, so you've got this TV thing going on, Ingrid going, "You're ruining our reputation because people are going to be scared of us." And Brian over here being like, "What are you talking about? That lady on TV loves us." And she's, going, they're so amazing. Great. They helped us. And obviously like maybe even some lovey eyes at Brian. And then Ingrid is over here being like, "Well, of course she loves you. She freaking works for the news." But that other guy is a civil activist of some kind, and he
hates
represents
us.
the people better. He
I'll be
represents
hilarious.
the pulse of the people better, and he doesn't like us, so other people don't like us. And then you've got, the difference between these two things, which are both false realities in a way.
Yeah. Which would be funny if you saw Brian actually being interviewed by the woman on the TV in the news report, and he's got his hands on his hips, looking just like Superman. And he's got that smile and the dimple in his chin. He's like, "We do good work," just this Dudley Do-Right facade. Yet when he leaves, he has his ego, and then Valdez is like, "What the heck? Like, you were so like." That would be hilarious. Like,
that would have been so much better. So you add that to the previous thing where he swooped in to stop that thing from happening. And the news crew is already there because they're obviously getting all of this action happening with the tanks and everything. So then Brian took care of that guy. And then the news lady ran up to interview Brian. And that's when he's doing what you're saying.
Yeah, and he thought it was a good PR stunt.
Yep. And then when he gets to the eagle nest, he's like, "Hey, did you see me on TV? I got interviewed on the way here." Because then everybody's like, "You're freaking late." And so then Ingrid is like, "Yeah, we saw you on TV." And so then the interview is playing on the TV in the background. And so then that's when she confronts her, or that's when she confronts him about it.
It'd be funny if he wasn't even listening to her. He's just looking like, "Oh man, I need to brush up my suit over here. I got a stain right there." He's just make him like this ridiculous, like, peacocking guy who's actually good-hearted, but he's arrogant at the same time. And he does want to give good PR, and it's like, "This is the perfect PR stunt. The police weren't handling it. I did. The newscast was there. I got an interview to show that I had time to talk to them," and then flew away and ignores everything that Flynn tells him. Like, "We didn't call you. We didn't need you." And he's like, "Whatever, man." And then just gets the F out of here and goes back to the eagle nest. Like,
he goes, "Look, I stood there and talked to that news person because I wanted her to know that I care about plebeians too."
Yep.
He doesn't like mean it in any specific way, but he doesn't see himself necessarily the same as them. And he believes himself to be very generous with his time because he believes himself very much better.
Yes.
Like, there are so many different things that you could do with this character. It's just one direction that you could go. But the thing is, he and all of the other characters are lacking.
Significantly.
Just leaning into giving them some kind of character and letting them interact every bit of the scenes, because they're, again, so short that you have literally zero character with them.
It's super plotty.
She goes, "Oh, it's tense in here." What tension? They've like exchanged one line with each other and then walked away.
Yeah, like, it's like, literally, I'm looking at it now, and like they're just staring at each other, and then they walk away, and then it's like, "Oh, it was tense." Like, really? Was it though? It was like taking elements from stories, like you have mentioned before, and then inserting them in there when they feel appropriate to do so, and then forgetting about it, because it is very plotty. It reminds me of those really bad Jason Statham movies that my dad absolutely loves to death, and they're all action and no character and hardly any story. It's all very paint by the numbers action, like from point A to point B to point C to point D to all the way to fucking Z. Okay, like, there's no moment in between getting from point A to point B and point C that is like an actual slow down to be with these characters and enjoy them and learn about them and know about their personalities and see them in action. Like,
and that's just the dumbest thing when there are so many inserted pages in here to switch between scenes that it lacks character, because it just would never slow down to let you be with the character, that it all feels like fluff.
Not one time. Even Avery.
I have no idea.
Like, even I saw him slow down a few times. I saw him had enough sense to slow down. I can't believe I'm saying this. I saw him as better than Alphacore.
Mm-hmm. At least I
It
saw him
is.
one. I feel like
At least
I
I
saw
saw
him 2 has
one.
I saw him 2 has more ideas in it still.
Yeah,
But I saw him 1 has much more character. I saw
it
him 2
does.
had less character because Avery felt a lot less like himself than I saw him 2.
He did, like I said, like he calmed down significantly. He just wasn't who I'd been. It was like a completely different character.
Mm-hmm.
Like a completely different character. It's like this could have been who he should have been. This is who he should have been in the first one, and then maybe get to the point where his anger had finally ramped up and he couldn't take it no more.
Mm-hmm.
But aside from that, in Alphacore, you really don't have a genuine moment with these characters at all. It's all very like rip off of better characters, in my opinion. And all these little amalgamations of them are just sort of like sloppily pasted onto a cardboard cutout of what looks like a human being.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of switching scenes, we get just that scene where they had just been arguing, and then we get to switch to a new scene where the police are there to arrest an old woman named Gloria, and this fire electric man starts attacking. A different Alphacore man, this is going to be Braxwell, swings into the scene and beats the guy. He gets there fast, considering the call was literally just put in, so he must have just been flying around. Again, this is one of the reasons where he could have been like, and this is why the Eagle Nest is a good idea, even if it's inconvenient to everyone else, but we don't get anything. Or he was already in the area. So whatever. Gloria comes out and sees the older man on the ground, the man that they have come to arrest. She is now under arrest for grand theft, apparently stealing enough from a dollar store to be more than petty theft, which is like over $1,000.
How in the world, like, I guess she must have doing it over a period of years, because like that happened to us when I worked at Kroger, but this woman was stealing like meat and expensive meat. And
but you can't. It was a dollar store. She wasn't
not
stealing.
A dollar. Yeah, not
from, they specifically said from a dollar store.
Yeah, like the dollar store. I'm looking at it right now. She's all like, really, from the dollar store? Like, how in the world, like, do you amount to $1,000? Like, what in the world, and how long were you been doing this? 5 years to amount to grand theft? Like, what in the world? Like, any sensible like employee or like manager of these kinds of establishments would just tell them if they don't stop doing this, they're going to call the cops or ban them from the store completely. And obviously, she's been caught doing it since the police showed up, and so like. It's just, again, it's sort of goofy. I mean, it'd be funnier if it was smarter, but it's not. And
so now we got to the first criminal from the first scene, saying the first criminal being the bomber guy. Because again, we're changing scenes again.
So
all you got was just that random arrest scene for like 4 pages, maybe, and now we're in the jail cell with the robber from the first scene. And we learned that he learned how to make bombs using the internet, but doesn't remember where or how. I mean, let's be real. You could I'm pretty sure you could just go to YouTube and watch people
learn
make
how to make a bomb
together and learn how to make different types of bombs. I remember when I was making Boom Boom Boom, I was trying to figure out what he could grab from a drugstore like Walgreens, since he goes into a Walgreens, to make a little smoke bomb.
Few household appliances, what was it, like applied in the proper something. It's from a movie, but like you have kill chemicals applied in the perfect proportions or something like that. You can make a bomb out of household chemicals. That is very true. So
so him being like, I have no idea, bro. You can literally just Google the anarchist cookbook. Let's not be this dumb.
But then he said that he was shocked that it blew up altogether because he thought it was like a fake bomb, or he didn't realize he had chocked it full of so much power, because he Brian asked him, like, what the fuck did you put in this, like C4 and something else? Like, I can't remember what the other thing was, but whatever. Like, it was that powerful, car alarms were going off. So he clearly knows how to put it together, but he didn't think it was going to go off. Like, for goodness sake.
So the lady cop also takes the opportunity there to say if she looked over his browser history, she'd probably see porn and takeout orders. Another guy comes in and tells the woman that the criminal's lawyer is here. They're all surprised. Perhaps they shouldn't be, because you gotta tell somebody their Miranda rights, and if they were with him the whole time. You know, the Miranda rights are said in order to make anything they say admissible in court. If you don't administer Miranda rights when you arrest somebody, then even if they made a confession to you, there's a way to actually make that confession non-admissible in court, which is why cops take it so seriously
Yeah,
to
you
give
have
you
to
the
read them.
Miranda rights
Mhm.
before they interrogate you, unless they are corrupt.
Yeah, or you have to read them in full, like not
Yeah.
just halfway, in full, because that is still like that's a hiccup. They can get you for that. Like
Yep,
they really
that's how
can.
you get a dismissal on a lot of criminal cases, is by not reading the Miranda rights. So the guy goes, "Oh, I didn't know that I could just not talk. This is not admissible in court because you didn't tell me my rights."
Yeah, I don't even think when they freaking like arrested that one guy, or the woman at least, like, or the guy or something like that. What the heck? They arrested him. Like, you have the right to remain. Like, you were under
You
arrest
so
for grand theft, cover,
that's
and they
but
don't
see,
even say anything.
that's actually a misnomer. You don't have to give somebody the Miranda rights when you're
Ah.
detaining them. You
Mhm.
only have to administer the Miranda rights when you're going to talk to them. And
Oh.
because that's when you start your interrogation. And so what you're saying when you do the Miranda rights is anything you say can and will be used against you in court. You're saying that they are now knowingly telling you anything that could become part of a case in the future.
Right.
But if you don't administer the Miranda rights and give them a chance to lawyer up before talking to you, and then then they have to choose whether or not to waive having a lawyer and talk to you, or if I want a lawyer. Like, that's what it is. It's for the defense and the fair treatment of the suspect. And so they
Right.
have to give you permission to put them on the record with or without a lawyer.
Mhm.
And so it's only necessary if you're going to get information from them that you're going to use in the trial.
Okay. Okay, I got you.
So then
I don't know all this stuff.
I learned it in the psychology and law and the courtroom class that I took for my forensic psychology degree.
All I knew is that police had to like read you your Miranda rights.
Yep.
That's
but
all I
it's-
like.
and
I
it's
didn't know this because they had to talk to you.
Yep, it's usually done on television during the arrest because it
Yeah.
kind of shrinks down the spreading out of the situation and it lets you see the Miranda rights, but you
Yeah.
don't actually generally administer the Miranda rights when you arrest.
Oh, I did not know that. Wow, TV has lied to me again. I was like,
Just assume that everything on TV is a condensed version or a changed
oh yeah.
version. So anyway, so they shouldn't be surprised because if they've always been with this guy, then they would know if he's contacted his lawyer or hasn't contacted his lawyer. Somebody should have been with this man because they're the ones that would have allowed him to contact anybody.
Or the lawyer just randomly turned up, because I think that's what happened. His lawyer turned up. Maybe he didn't realize he had a lawyer.
Well,
and the
that's
lawyer
what it
just
is.
Came up. Yeah.
This guy is not actually his lawyer. He works for Lillian.
And Michael.
And Michael. So this guy is going in to clean up Michael's mess. So he was sent in without this guy's help, without this guy contacting, and then is saying, I'm the lawyer. And then the guy is like, oh, okay, you're my lawyer. So he did show up that way. But these cops shouldn't just be like, oh, you have a random
did
person.
He request? Yeah, did he request a lawyer? Yeah,
because y'all should know that. And if he did request a lawyer, then you are required as a cop, if you're not a corrupt cop, to stop the interrogation until their representation has arrived. Because if they say, I want a lawyer, and you push them for information, then if they do not get their representation, that stuff can be dismissed in court. Anything that they say can be dismissed in court if you do not have representation when you demand representation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. Like, too, like, I don't even think did Lillian send the lawyer? Because I feel like it was, because the lawyer, never mind, but that's a spoiler, but whatever. But like I think Michael sent the lawyer to cause a bigger mess because like, I don't know what's going on. Like, that's another thing. I'm getting confused. Okay, so like he sends the lawyer to get rid of deal with it, but also later on, like the Galvin guy, a guy that was Braxwell dealt with, is in the same jail, and in fact has the same lawyer as the bomber guy does, and they're in the same next to each other, which I find it stupid that happened, because like, why is this guy not in a special cell? He clearly absorbed, like from what we saw, he clearly absorbs electrical output to manifest it into his own abilities, and he's got like electrical abilities, and he's there behind a bar jail cell. And I'm like, why isn't he in a specialized cell? There's electrical equipment everywhere. This is a high-risk person. Like, I just, unless nobody's doing their jobs down there, everybody's just sticking their thumbs up their asses and not
I mean,
giving
clearly.
the appropriate, right?
Let's be
Like,
real. Clearly, apparently, there was
clearly.
no discussion of, hey, BT dubs, keep everything. How does one person guarding this guy know keep electricity away from him, and the other one uses a taser on him?
Yeah, that was so,
Like, are
I was
you
like, oh my
serious?
God.
This is a book of convenient, just
Conveniences.
everybody sucks.
Everyone sucks at their job.
The lawyer walks in, and I hope you didn't think that you were actually going to get a scene with characters. No, you get blue-balled again.
Yep.
We go back to Brian as he's being lectured by his boss that he is not supposed to butt into anything because Alphacore is a last resort. Basically just telling him that he needs to do nothing and fly around until they're actually called. And Alphacore man is like, okay, fine, whatever. Can I leave now?
Yeah, that's literally, they just leave. That whole scene, what was the point of that?
Yeah, we already got him being lectured by the captain.
We did. We didn't need to see it again. It's like, and then it's just to show him being sassy. I'm like, that's not a genuine, that's a false character moment. I refuse to accept that because we don't learn anything new except he's an asshole.
And again, see, if you'd have just let them have a scene in front of the TV where he's like, hey, don't I look great, blah, 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 I'm doing PR, blah, blah, blah. And the guy could have been like, you need to not jump into stuff. This isn't your time to be a hero, Brian. You need to wait because we need to work with the cops, not make them into an enemy. It is not the cops versus Alphacore for the attention of the people. We are supposed to help the cops. So, like, you could have had that moment over the television or something, but then you didn't need to have it with the captain earlier that was then calling him a freak. Like, you didn't need to repeat that information.
Yeah, and also, like, hell, if you wanted, he could have been wrong and right in the same time. Like, you know, like, have him try to be gracious with the officers, but then he's not. Say he did that for a PR stunt, okay? And so technically what he did was socially uncouth and wrong to do that to people you're supposed to be helping, but also the situation was not being handled right either. So it was good that he came in, but he also didn't come in good faith either. So have them both be kind of right and wrong at the same time. Like, he did the right thing, but did it for the wrong reason. So, I mean, anything than just he's right and all the cops are stupid. Like, for God's sake, like.
Now we go to a fancy restaurant because, again, you're getting blue-balled. Don't expect to spend too much time with any of these characters. Again, you're just going to get like 1 to 4 or 5 pages max before it switches characters. So now we go to the fancy restaurant where Michael is on the phone and sitting down with a woman to eat when...
Who's not Lillian.
When Lillian shows up right behind her immediately and interrupts this meal. So what even was the point of that woman being there?
No.
Other than to show that Michael sits with other women, whatever. So all she says is, you're supposed to be taking care of something. And he says, I'm not getting my hands dirty. End of scene.
I have another person for that.
Literally.
And then we can only surmise it's the lawyer that came in.
Why is he so stupid? If he sends the lawyer in, it's like, because
he's genuinely stupid. And I mean, it's not even funny stupid. He is stupid.
And you know what? You could make it work.
You could
make it work, but it didn't. It didn't even try.
No, it really didn't. Like, all these scenes with them, it was like really bizarre, and they were so quick, and it didn't even feel like it needed to be there.
From this, we go back to the electric guy named Galvin, the old guy that they arrested with Grand Theft Dollar Store over there. And he's in his prison cell, asks the cop man for a light, and apparently Galvin gets energy/sparks from electronic connection. The lighter won't do it though, and so the guy is wearing a radio. So the guy approaches wearing a radio. Nobody talked to them about what to do with this except. And that radio is more than enough electricity to give Galvin power. Then Galvin pulls the guy through the bars because, again, we're using zero discretion while approaching this super human. Then he licks the electric waves. And then the woman cop who is there with them shoots Galvin with a stun gun.
And also, she hits the guy he's holding hostage too. Like, I just noticed that. I'm like, oh my gosh, she didn't just not only hit Galvin, she hit the other guy too. And so now he's getting shocked full of
Juiced.
electric juice. He is juiced, dude. He's on that super go-go juice. And he busts out of prison and he kills the bomb guy to erase the that he was ever involved with Michael. I'm assuming that was the overall plan that we're going with.
Yeah,
But
because
then
that's
that
not
also
sketchy.
leaves Galvin. That's not sketchy. Like, they have the same lawyer, the lawyer who mysteriously appeared out of nowhere for the bomb guy, whose name is Cecil, by the way. I just remembered that. It popped into my head. So what it matters is it doesn't, like, for all that it matters. And then now they have a lunatic on the loose because the cops can't do their job. But then somehow they also know that this is possibly a contract too. Like, so it's just conveniences again. Like, they know they're aware enough to know that this is a setup, but they're not actually showing them looking for clues to put together as to how this is a setup. Because at that point, it's just conjectural, it's speculatory. You can assume that's the case, but you have no evidence to prove it. And so they're just saying this, and they're not really doing anything to look for those clues. Like, we don't see Alphacore doing it, we don't see the cops doing it, we don't see anybody doing this. It's just, take my word for it and let's keep going. It's so dumb. Like, oh my god.
So that scene ends, and we're back to Alphacore man Brian and Alpha woman Ingrid, who are at the jail looking over the crime scene and basically being asked why they're there and told that they're not needed. How did they get
showed
there?
up there somehow.
How did they get any information on this? We didn't see any of that. They're just there, and everybody
They're
is
just
like,
there
bro,
looking around. Bro, why are you here?
Nobody called you. What are
Despite
you doing?
the fact it's a fucking except that they're having to deal with. I think even Brian says that, like, we're dealing with an except here.
Which then you're like, what, you guys don't recognize that? Again, it's just, it's so forced to just be like, hey, get out of here because you're weirdos or whatever, without giving any...
Yeah, because Brian goes, you have homicide by except, that falls under our jurisdiction. And then the lady's like, well, I guess we could use the muscle, which, Ingrid's like, huh, we don't need your fucking help, bitch. So there's a cat fight going on at the same time. Oh, good lord.
The policewoman asks what the lawyer would have against Alphacore, because the lawyer for these guys was also the activist that was on television, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I wonder how he would have something against them. I can't possibly tell you the reason for that. I just can't. I'm sorry. The vagueness of it all just eludes me.
Alphacore says that they aren't well liked by the city officials, so it wouldn't take much to get them defunded.
Yeah, that is true. We've noticed the city officials are not overly fond of people with superpowers.
Which is also a weird switch from Isom, because Yaira comes in, and the dude over there is immediately like, call Alphacore. So we got a 180 going on from Isom.
I got freaking whiplash too, dude. I think my neck just went around.
Which maybe this is the origin story of why the city started liking them. Who knows? I don't know how many arcs.
Oh god, if it's another origin story, I'm going to blow my top. Like, why? Is this a comprehensive timeline that we just see how they all started out and then...
Honestly, I think if you were going to introduce Alphacore in Isom 1 and then have the thing with Yaira as well also introduced, because there's obviously a battle between the two of them. There's obviously, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a rivalry. There's a rivalry and there's a tension with Yaira and the city specifically.
Yeah.
So it might have actually been better to make the first Alphacore novel an introduction to the relationship between Alphacore and Yaira.
And the public, too.
To give that moment that happened in Isom 1 more understanding.
So let's say that Alphacore is like a brand new thing. We'll take a brand new thing, and for the start, right? It's a brand new thing, and they're not getting a lot of favor from anybody or anyone in all directions. And then at some point, maybe show them kind of trying to help, but they keep messing up. They're getting frustrated. They're getting frustrated with the police. The police are frustrated with them. And then after all that, you build this tension with all these people. And then eventually Yara comes into the picture and starts just causing all all hell breaks loose when she shows up. She's had a bad day and she's going to take it out on somebody. And so you could have Alphacore stop Yara, have this epic fight between Brian and Yara, Braxton and Valdez, having to work together as a team, because throughout this entire freaking thing, we never see them working together as a team, which is what they're supposed to be, to take down something like Yara, and then after they do so, they earn public favor because of that. That could be how Alphacore got introduced in the first place.
I mean, because you could also, if you wanted to do this as something like that too, is you could have had Brian and possibly Braxwell and Ingrid, if you wanted to build them as a unit together as friends, you could have made them all ex-military, or, you know, all coming in at the same time, maybe not all ex-military, but all going through boot camp near or around the same time. And they were having a hard time being accepted by the police because nobody at the station wanted to work with them when they discovered that they had powers. So the three of them...
Yeah, because they'd be putting them out of a job, basically.
And so then they kept being put on desk duty because nobody wanted to work with them. And Brian is like, this is not why I joined the force.
You see how big I am? Do I think do I look like a pencil pusher to you? I'm here to break jaws, man.
And so then the three of them come together and they come up with the idea, or he comes up with the idea. Because then, you know, that's why he's so happy when the other guy likes the idea of the floating thing. But so then he goes, oh, hey, maybe I can bring it to the captain, and maybe we can start our own thing that is meant for people like us to be like a special forces on the police so that we can actually do jobs. And so then the captain says, hell no, because that's going to scare people. And then you've got the Yaira situation where that sets up the relationship of whatever happened with Yaira and the city to make the city hate Yaira and be like, get the frick out, don't come back. And then you actually end up with Braxwell, Ingrid, and Brian all taking care of Yaira. Yeah. And that's how they actually get funded to have Alphacore.
Alphacore. Perfect. Good.
So then you've gotten so much set up in just that.
Yeah, that would have been that would have been a fun read. Everybody loves a good underdog story, but I feel like nobody wants these characters to be the underdogs. Like, I don't know why everybody loves the underdog story. I don't know if they're worried because it's been done before. You can never knock a good underdog story. You can never. I don't care how many times it's been done. You can never knock them if they're good. But that's another thing too, where they're afraid to kind of make their characters look bad, and so they unintentionally make them look bad by not accepting or embracing the qualities in which they're implementing into these characters, like Brian being kind of a dick and Valdez being hot-headed. I don't know anything about Braxwell. He's the most even-tempered of them all and seems to do the most work, but you know, like, it's all very, like, again, like, they're afraid to kind of make them look bad. You know what I mean? Like, they're afraid to make them wrong. Like, maybe they were wrong for doing this, you know, or look bad in some way. Just have fucking fun with it, dude. And if you're gonna be an absurd person, like with that overkill beginning at the start of this freaking product, like, just run with it. Be campy, be absurd. That's one of the fun things about comic books. It doesn't mean that they can't have serious moments, but it definitely would have endeared me more to it if it knew what it was and just embraced it, you know? Like, that's what I think.
But then bringing up defunding them in this, what would defunding them even mean? Because it wouldn't get rid of the accepts in the city. It wouldn't get rid of Brian and Ingrid and anybody else who is an accept. So then what would defunding actually do but get rid of the containment unit for the accepts that they have on the force? And then force everybody who doesn't want to work with them to work with them, or to know that these guys are running around the city, have vigilante tendencies and are not part of the police.
Yeah, because they possibly just risk them being vigilantes because they clearly want to do something and they don't want to do a vigilante thing. And I'm guessing maybe Isom or Avery was kind of a vigilante, or maybe he was. I really don't know because we're not that far into it, because I really don't know anything about his background as to how he became one.
Yeah.
Like, and the same thing applies for Alphacore. The only thing that I can surmise is that, one, Valdez is a cop, and then two, Brian was military. Like, he was in the military. Like, that's it. I don't know anything about Braxwell. Like, you really learned very little about any of these people that you spend this much time with and know nothing about them except for just basic personality traits that do nothing for them. They do nothing for them because there's nothing for them to attach to that makes it fun for them. And it's something that I'm tired of seeing myself. And like, again, like Avery had some motives, and regardless of how he fucking got to the city, I still think that was stupid. But it's just
freaking at this point, when I'm comparing it to Alphacore, at least freaking Avery was like, you disrespected me. At least I know what Avery's most important thing is, which is respect.
Yep.
What do I have for any of these Alphacore people?
None.
Nothing.
Not a nothing. Zilch.
So back to the baddies after just mentioning this defunding thing. Again, we don't anything. So we're back to the baddies, Michael and Lillian, and she's yelling at him for being an idiot. Yeah, she's like, how you freaking killed that pawn in jail? They're going to see the connections, Michael. They're not as dumb as you.
And it's not like it's subtle either. Each time that he has tried to dispose of evidence, he's just made more evidence to point the finger at him. So then the boss bitch does the job for him.
He says not yet. It's still his plan.
Oh, still his plan?
Billy Bob is still his plan.
Oh my God, that was so offensive.
Because she says, how you killed the pawn. They're going to come for you. And he's like, not yet. And then it goes over to the Billy Bob.
Yeah, it goes to Billy Bob. And I'm just like, really? You're getting all these people who could easily be linked back to you. Do you think the guy didn't know he had made a bomb? And then you managed to get the lawyer to kill off the bomb guy, but now there's a guy on the loose, two of them in fact, who know why they killed the bomb guy, and now they have to deal with that. And now he's gone to this other guy who is a hillbilly living in a trailer or a shack that lives with his grandma, who I guess is in on it too, and tells him to get the fuck up and go do his job at the bank, and sprays him with like one of those fire extinguishing things. And then he goes to the bank, and then that's the one scene we see him in, not until later. But then it cuts back, and I think she's like, well, I have a better idea.
Yeah, we only get Billy. Like, I need to slow this down for you really quick, just so you can see how choppy this is.
Yeah.
So you get the baddies saying they're going to come for you. You get a page with this hillbilly guy in a trailer with his grandma getting sprayed by a fire extinguisher. Then we go back to Lillian and Michael, where she says, I don't trust your methods. I'm taking over. And then we're in the bank with some dude in a purple suit getting into a safety deposit box.
Who rode...
That's how fast it switches.
It is. It switches so fast. And like the guy clearly, I'm going to assume, has some sort of telepathic abilities, because the guy, the banker dude, that he approaches, do you have like any, identification for this? He needs papers to get in. He goes, I don't think we need any of that now, do we? And basically mind warps, because that's what I'm assuming. There's no real clue as to what, like, there's nothing to indicate or tell that is what has happened. That's my assumption. So this dude rolled a D20 on charisma and then gets him to take him to that vault. He takes what he needs and he hits the door. And it's like, Michael, you idiot. Like, that's all you need. Like you should have let her handle this to begin with. He's a dummy.
Yep.
Like, oh, for crying out loud. But since Michael can't leave without having a big show, Billy Bob shows up.
Nope. You got purple suit man in the safety deposit box. Gets in there, gets out, and then Alphacore man is standing in the bank lobby.
And he just gets by them without even being seen.
And then Alphacore man is in there, probably because, well, no, why is Alphacore man there? They didn't actually get a talk to the robber guy to be like, hey, why were you at the bank?
No, they didn't.
Unless that happened off screen, and now we're just supposed to assume it, like so much else in this book where they don't actually procure information. They just do a thing.
Yeah, they do a thing, and then it leads to another thing, and then, yeah, storytelling, guys.
So
that's how it works.
Then after we got Alphacore man standing in the lobby, we're back to Ingrid, who is driving around in the city with another cop.
Since she can't
looking
fly.
for Galvin, and yeah, she can't fly, so she's with this other cop. He tells her that she should get her own car and name it, and then she gets mad at him because she's like, hey, I'm not a freaking book character. I don't do stupid names.
Not a comic book character. I'm like, oh, please don't be meta. Please don't be meta. I can't even with that. Like,
in looking for Galvin, they go to this apartment that belongs to his old cellmate, and the cop, who is supposed to be a regular cop, uses this ability where he basically twists the mechanical lock inside of the door because he's technically a low-powered accept, but nobody knows that.
Yeah.
Because he basically just treats it as like a party trick, and it's not very strong. And she's like, whoa, you can do that? And he's like, not a whole lot of stuff. And she's like, well, you can do a lot more if you just practice up the skill. It's like a muscle. It deteriorates.
Yeah, that's what she says to him. And then I think, blam, he gets blasted. Like, there was no lead up to that either. Like, blam, he's blasted. Galvin gets him. He's down. And then Valdez starts fighting him.
Yep. And then in between, mixed between these. So you've got the bank going on at the same time this fight is going on in Galvin's thing. And again, it is disruptive to the reading. I think that it's trying to do what you do with movies where you switch back and forth between scenes, but it does not work here. It is just disruptive, and it's confusing, and it breaks the tension, and it doubly doesn't work when the whole rest of the book is constantly switching between groups. So then this doesn't look like a deliberate choice.
No, at all. Like, it was actually really jarring to read. I had a hard time with it. I'm like, I know what you're trying to do here, but it's actually not working.
Yeah.
And this does look like it was more so inspired by film than comics, which always confuses me because now it's invading the comics.
And I personally have a beef with anybody who misuses different mediums and does not respect the medium that they're in. Because I've seen people be like, oh, if you can't draw, then just write a novel. Maybe your idea doesn't work for a novel because there are certain ideas that have to be visual. I have a couple ideas with Sam that could not be a novel because they're comics. And so some things are comics, some things are movies, some things are video games, some things are novels. They are not interchangeable because they have different strengths and weaknesses, and they tell stories in different ways. And so for this, trying to be a movie as a comic book, they share the fact that they are both visual mediums, but they have different needs.
Yes. And that's why, some things in books don't translate well to film. That's why they're only good in books. You can maybe get away with it in animation, but there's just certain stuff that just is for books and should stay in books. And the same thing applies that's why video game movies don't work half the time. They're not meant to be movies. And the same thing applies for I guess we can sit here and say comic books are now being able to turn into movies because I guess they're the closest thing that you can get to making a movie. But it's just not the same. They require, like what you said, different forms of attention because they work in different ways.
And that's that's not to say you cannot do an adaptation, but you have to make changes from the books to make it a visual medium, and you have to change things to make something a comic book from a movie or a movie from a comic book. You can't keep it one for one for one for one.
Right. You can't. And that's why Peter Jackson made the decision, I think it was Peter Jackson who made the decision to actually have a physical, visible eye sitting on top of the tower in Mordor. But in the book, that's not there. It's just what Frodo visualizes when he puts the ring on, essentially. But they can't, like, it was strange, just like what he sees in his head, right? And like sometimes you can't convey that to an audience the same way that you would like in a book. It's easier to understand it in a book than a film. And so that's why he chose to make it a visual for everyone to see. Like you could actually see it versus not being able to see it.
And so if you wanted to do a collage, which is what I assume this is trying to do, where it's like this person is fighting this, and then the bad guy flies through the wall. And then if it was a movie, you'd have the camera where that's the wall at the bank. And so like you could have them kind of be a continuous string where it's mixing the two. But you can follow that better, number one. Number two, most movies don't do that constant switching of scenes.
And like when they do, it's jarring too.
And when they're mixing scenes like that, when it's deliberate, you can tell that it's deliberate.
Yes.
But this is just like the way that it flips between the bad guys and being with different Alphacore people. It just looks ill-focused. And so then it doesn't stand out when it tries to do this fighting of the two scenes, because you're not even actually following two separate storylines where they're chasing after two separate people and then going between Ingrid and Alphacore Man.
No.
It's just been like a bunch of random scenes.
Yeah, especially I hate it whenever Lillian and Michael would come up too. Aside from the fighting scene right here, but like I'm telling you, like she is not wrong or anything. Like this is actually, you're not exaggerating. This is jarring. Like the random scenes that get inserted into, like that one scene with Brian being scolded by his commanding officer. That didn't need to be in there, at least not interwoven into the story. It disrupts the flow. It disrupts the pattern. Like there's no flow. There's nothing in this comic moves smoothly through its story. The transitions are abrupt. And you as the reader feel that.
Also, if you're going to do want to do a comparison between these two fight scenes so that the reader can follow it, what would have actually worked better would have been a 2-page spread of sorts.
Yes.
Where you've got the apartment on one side and the bank on the other side, and maybe, the little mini panel up here where the characters are looking at something and they're like, hey, are you looking for something? And then in the major part of the panel beneath it, or the major page, you've got the cop and Ingrid like turning around and seeing Galvin on the other side of that couch. And then you've got on the other one in the bank, Alphacore Man turning around and seeing the big guy, or both of them just being blasted. You could even just have, on that bottom one, instead of them turning around and looking, it being the superheroes as they were turning around, but being blasted by fire on one side and electricity on the other. So they're kind of mirror images of each other. And
that would be really cool.
That as a way to juxtapose. It was a setup this whole time.
Yep. Right there. Like you just fixed it in 2 fucking seconds. Like 2 fucking seconds. Like it's absurd. Again, 14 people worked on this, ought to be ashamed of themselves. This is bullshit.
Yeah, the paneling should be so much better than this.
It should be so much better.
To me, it just looks like everybody that worked on this project didn't give a crap, and so they put in the bare minimum to put something together, and they go, well, it's something that's.
Or they're incredibly inexperienced and they're riding off of their egos, thinking that it's going to be great, but have no fucking clue what they're doing.
Yep. Who knows? So we got this fight going on between the two groups, and Alphacore Man is actually sucky and losing to the Accept in the bank. So apparently, who needs Alphacore Man when he can't even do his freaking job? He loses, and Billy Bob is going into the vault, and then the banker just locks him into the vault.
The banker locked him in there. That was so funny.
And because Billy Bob uses fire, because the fire requires air and oxygen to get bigger, Billy Bob, his fire weans off and he just kind of starts suffocating in the vault. So now he's defanged, and it was the banker that could do it, and Alphacore Man couldn't.
He couldn't, they had to get, and then he starts having like a panic attack. Like the freaking, God. Oh my God, freaking the Billy Bob, he looks like Ben Grimm, the Thing from Fantastic Four, except just it's fire. And I actually thought it was Ben from Fantastic Four. But because I saw some of the artwork that was in there, and I thought, is that Ben? Is that the Thing? And nope, it's just Billy Bob, who turns into molten lava rock man. And
he does look a lot like a ripoff of that specifically.
He does.
There is nothing unique about him that he looks just like that.
Oh no, not at all.
So then there's also a lack of a moment here where the captain, oh my gosh, especially considering Alphacore Man was so useless in stopping this Accept. How is it that the captain from the beginning of the book didn't walk in and be like, oh, you mean you want my guys to go into the vault and finish taking care of things? So Larry, he could have had his moments to come back at it, because obviously the cops come in at that last, after he's in the vault, and the cops go in with the guns and pick up this guy.
And then hose him down too with a fire hydrant,
So
water.
The cop from the beginning should have been there getting back at Brian for Brian taking his kill, and then using that to be his job.
Yeah,
and then
I
come
know what
back.
you're saying. Yeah.
Meanwhile, you've got Alpha Core woman is having a moment with the cop after having dealt with Galvin,
That's
which what
very
even
short.
it is very short. They're sitting outside and we're still going back and forth. So we've got high tension in the vault going over here to where Galvin and Ingrid are talking to each other and then back to the vault, interrupting the character moment, the discussion, the connection that these two could be having.
Yeah, I would have rather seen her talking to I don't know, the cop guy, than
Mhm.
see Brian just doing whatever. Like, it's not intriguing. Like that's just not work for this, like, at all. The double, like, going back and forth between things. Like, you did not find a good way to create this and craft it and put it together. Like, I think certain things there needed to be a deliberate discussion about this. And I wonder if a lot of people are just too afraid to go against somebody like Chuck Dixon because he's
Mhm.
such a big name. And so if anybody actually did have any qualms with the pacing in this and saw it but couldn't do it because Chuck's such a big name, they just kept their mouth shut. Because that happens. Like, I wouldn't blame them if that happened, because it's kind of scary. You don't want to lose their job. Like, or just focus on one of them and then don't put so much emphasis on another one. Like, that's fine. Like, you don't have to show each and every single one of them having these moments in tandem with each other. You can focus on, like, the Ingrid and Wilker's discussion about how,
Mhm.
whatever they were talking about. And then maybe at the end of that, when it ends, and maybe she's been feeling frustrated with her job and how she kind of maybe even feels a little useless because Brian and Braxwell can fly. She can't. But
And see,
then,
that's something that doesn't even need to be established in this book either, or because it's trying. I think it's one thing it's trying to do is give all three Alpha Core people a focus, but you need to just introduce the group, but then give it an identity first. So this
yeah.
book could have been focused on Brian, establishing Brian as theoretically the leader. And then
hmm
in the side ground, you have what's setting up Braxwell's issues and Ingrid's issues. So then in the next issue, you could have Ingrid be more center and
Yeah.
her issues starting to pop up, because you don't need all three to be the focus.
No, you don't. You can focus on one person at a time. Like, books do this too with the changing POVs. Dan Simmons did it in Carrying Comfort. Stephen
Hmm.
King did it in The Stand and in It. He's done it in a lot of his books. There's a way to do it, but that is books. But you can focus on one and more than one person at a time. You can. You just got to know what you're talking about to give it, like, an identity, like you said. But really, there was no person to focus on. Like, I didn't
Hmm.
know if we were focusing on. We definitely. I knew we weren't really going to be focusing on Braxwell because he came in randomly. I don't think he ever said one word about the entire thing. But it was mostly a toss up between Ingrid and Brian,
Hmm.
and that was it. And we didn't learn anything about them. I think that was probably one of the most frustrating aspects, was we're getting all of them in here and we're not learning a thing about them except for these very small details that don't necessarily contribute to their characters, like Valdez being a cop, or freaking Brian being military. I don't know what the hell Braxton is, but whatever.
And see, that doesn't even matter. If we think of how to build this with Brian trying to like get their group to have some legitimacy, and
hmm
then Valdez feeling like she is lesser than the other guys because the other guys can fly. And so then
hmm
she and Wilkins both come from the cop background. So then they get time to spend together in this book. And
yeah.
don't kill him by the end of this book. Let them build that relationship. And then in the next book, when it focuses more on Ingrid and her issue with feeling inferior to the other guys, because now you get to have more of her focus, since this
hmm
book would have had Brian's focus and doing what Brian is doing, and Ingrid was in the periphery and Braxwell is just
Yep.
supporting staff. You can have the competing, the supporting, and the secondary, and then the main character,
hmm
and then move Ingrid into the main, and then Alpha Core Man into the secondary, and then Braxwell is still over here in the periphery because he'll come up
Yeah.
later. But like, you can have that issue, and then with Wilkins' relationship with Valdez growing in this book, and they solve the actual going down of the ship later together, because
hmm
she encouraged him after she found that, and they have that friendship and connection.
hmm
Then if he sacrifices himself in the future, it would actually mean more when he dies, as opposed
Yeah.
to this when he becomes a Deus Ex Machina, and you'll see what we mean later.
Oh yeah. When we get there, we're getting close too.
So we got this situation where they're now looking over the cameras to see why the guy, what security box everybody's been trying to get to, because they had the lawyer guy go in there to look at a security box, and that guy that Billy Bob was trying to get into the security to get into a vault. And so Brian looks where they were going and gets into that security box, and there is a USB drive in there. And they decide, apparently the cops just let them take the USB drive instead of taking it themselves.
Yeah.
And they go back to the Eagle base, Eagle Nest.
Yeah. I think what they wanted, they ended up getting. Like Lillian and Michael ended up getting what they wanted, but then I think the fat guy left that in there for them.
Yeah, 100%, because it's a back door. So that
Oh
was
my gosh.
specifically for them knowing that, or assuming / hoping that somebody
that someone would get it, and then they caused it.
That was left as a trap by Lillian.
Yeah.
So now we skip randomly over to an interview with the anti-accept guy, the civil activist from before, who is the lawyer, saying that the presence of the accepts is making the criminals act out more. This guy is making such a dumb argument that somebody...
It is a really dumb argument. How?
Like, look,
wouldn't the criminals be scared to death?
Cops shouldn't carry guns because guns make the criminals more nervous, so they rob more stores because...
Golly.
That's the argument.
That is the argument.
He finishes the interview with a congratulations on bringing the heat to that interview with all of his great questions, and he's stopped by the officers as he exits the stage. The cops address him about one of his clients being killed while in custody and the other one escaping. He slips away from the cops by abandoning them to go to the bathroom, and while he's urinating, he's cornered by
the fat man
with the charisma. The T1
charisma fat man. Yep.
He's taking too long in the bathroom, and so the cops go to check on him, and when they go in there, he's been thrown out the window, and he's dead on the car down below. Apparently...
I'm sorry.
Excuse me, are you telling me that the camera is not going to be able to see that hallway?
How did they not fucking see him walk out the door? It's not like he's dressed down. The man's in a purple suit and an orange shirt. Like, he is not hard to notice. And then they go in there... the lawyer is dead. I'm like, oh, gee, I wonder who did that. Like,
yeah, right.
Cops are not doing their job in this freaking book, man. Shit.
Oh, back over to the Alphacore Air Base. There's looking at the USB drive that I assume came out of the safety deposit box. And they're like, this is what it's all about. The talk of whether the bad guys want this USB drive is interrupted when Brian is being asked why he's wearing sunglasses. Because guess what? In this scene, Brian is randomly wearing sunglasses.
I know.
So we have no reason why he's wearing sunglasses. Somebody just mocks anybody for asking him why he's wearing sunglasses. And it's like, because he wants to. And that takes up like 3 to 5 panels.
Yeah,
and we get no reason as to why he's actually wearing sunglasses.
But even Braxwell's laughing, and Braxwell's conveniently out of frame. Like...
Again, it just feels like filler.
It's filler. That's exactly what it is.
And then we get back to the USB baggie, like, why did we even take a break from it? And the tech wizard that is sitting at the computer is like, we shouldn't just shove it into the computer system because that's kind of dangerous, and I don't have a good vibe about this. And Brian is like, well, let's find out what's in it.
Admittedly, this did make me laugh because of Brian's face after the thing. After the shit hit the fan, he's like, oops. Like, the look on his face was, like, fucking priceless. I'm not gonna, like, that was funny. Like, he realizes he made a stupid mistake, and he pulls his sunglasses off his nose. Like, oh my gosh. But yeah, it was. It's like, maybe we shouldn't, but he's like, nah, let's do it anyway.
Whatever.
Fuck it. YOLO!
And see, I could have gotten over it still more and agreed with him making that decision if we got to see more of his character throughout the book, where he is established as this gung-ho kind of stupid guy that just is not even thinking that far ahead. And he's like, you know what's, he's not even aware. Like, we can barely even use a cell phone. He is that technologically illiterate.
That'd be great if he was.
Good guy, like, trying to do his job and, like, let's solve this and get to the bottom of this. I could have... But we don't get any of those character moments. So
no.
What's on the USB drive is a backdoor hacking thing that takes over the entire airbase, and they lose control of the airbase.
It's going off. It's flashing red. There's a devil smiley emoji on the screen. And then low, the freaking eagle nest is coming to the ground. It is taking over. Actually, I think Lillian can control it. And
Yeah,
she's
she
trying
can
to
control
ram
it
it
from her
into
phone.
stuff. Yeah. So that was a big mistake on Brian's behalf, but it just makes him look stupid without it even being that funny. Even though I said that his face was funny, I just think, oh man, if it had been built up better, it would have been a really good moment.
Then the scene skips over to Michael and Lillian at an apartment, and Lillian is being messaged because her USB was just plugged into the computer system, and so now she has access on her phone. And then Michael is over there like, "What are you doing on your phone?" And so she shows him, and they're like, "Oh, not filing out the proper paperwork to get that USB. Oh, they haven't plugged it in yet."
And then the girl's like, don't fucking do it.
Anyway,
Brian's
so
like, let's do it.
they're arguing about plugging it in. And then we interrupt that scene before they actually plug it in to go over to Michael and Lillian, who are just receiving a back massage. Well, Lillian's receiving a back massage. And then she's like, "Hey, do you want one? Here's a super buff, ill-proportioned masseuse."
Woman, too. Like, it
Oh,
looks so dumb. I'm like, what happened to making beautiful women? Like, none of the women in this freaking comic are appealing whatsoever. Their faces aren't appealing. Their bodies aren't appealing. They look ridiculous. Their like anatomy is real fucked up. Like, they are not appealing at all to anybody. Like oh my gosh. Like, he's like, oh, okay. You know, like, so he's perfectly fine with it now. They're celebrating their victory essentially because they got rid of the evidence and they've planted a trap, basically.
yep. And so then from there, we skip over to Braxwell landing at a random crime scene. This chick has her shotgun drawn. Why do they have their guns drawn immediately? Is it because they're going after the accept, so they were just going to shoot him?
I guess so,
But
or
this
getting
way-
it prepared. I don't know what the protocol is for dealing with it, except if you're not one.
So they're just prepared to get this D20 charisma guy. Braxwell
Mhm.
lands, immediately is taping the guy's mouth because apparently the SWAT team here couldn't do that. They had to have a shotgun prepared instead of just having duct tape. And
Yeah.
then a couple of other accepts come flying out of the garage that the one guy came from, and we also blue ball that scene because Braxwell's about to get attacked, and then the scene ends. Then this is where Brian just takes the USB from the tech wizard chick and plugs it in, and everything goes to hell.
Yep, and then I believe it cuts. Oh my gosh, like that.
Yep,
Like,
then
why
we
did you
interrupt that to go back to the freaking arrest scene.
Yep, the arrest scene, and I'm just like, what is going on?
Which
All the things I
also,
want to see are not in here.
yeah, so looking back at the comic at the moment, you
Mhm.
get Braxwell being attacked, skip back to the shuttle, then
Mhm.
come back to Braxwell after the fight is over. So what happened here is they skipped drawing the fight scene.
They did. Oh, they did.
skipped the action scene.
They did Braxwell dirty a little bit, I think. I think they did. Like, I mean, that's fine. You don't, like, obviously you don't have to focus on him, but like I feel like there was no focus on anybody either. Like, that's just my interpretation. Maybe Brian, maybe Valdez. It was just, well, we know it wasn't Braxton, and it is just, there's nobody leading this from any point of view. Like, it's very much so like you are just observing shit happening and nobody is helping. Like, nobody, like, I don't know how to explain it other than like it's like a bird's eye view looking at all this stuff, and you're not focused on anybody. Nobody is driving the plot forward. The plot is just doing it on its own, and it's carrying the characters with it. Like, and that, to me, I don't really necessarily think that's how it should be all the time. I always feel like characters should drive the plot forward more than the plot is pulling the characters with it, and they're just sort of along for the ride. Does that make any sense? Like, okay.
Okay,
God,
so I
his
wanted
neck.
to show this comparison a lot because look at this art style here.
This, oh yeah, dude.
And then look at the next page. These are literally consecutive pages.
They're different.
They are
Like,
so different.
Even the line art is, because they did have different inkers, but even the coloring and the structure of the faces and everything is different from this. Like, you can tell that somebody else drew this and colored it, and somebody else drew the next one with Brian and colored that. And this had far more detail and scope put into it than Braxwell's
I
did.
mean, even just look at this right here. So look at the shading on the face. By the shading, I mean the cross hatching, and also the line weight.
Yep.
Okay, now look at the shading on these faces.
That's more like fuzz, like noise, like they're using noise rather than hatching, because that's not hatching.
And then look at the line weight, where there's
some hatching right over
actually
here.
difference in line weight, where his exterior of his body is a thicker line weight. Like you've got much more distinctive line sizes, line weights between the different things to show you where the edges are. But this one over here with Braxwell, there's a lot less of that, where everything feels heavy.
Yes, exactly. Everything feels heavy and saturated, and it's like pulling you down. And then the next image over, it's very different. Like you needed to have less than, you did not need to have this many colorists and inkers on your team.
It was detrimental.
They had a bunch. They had more inkers than colorists, because I think they only had 2 colorists, and that's fine. But the inking is what makes it difficult, because they have so many inkers working on this that I don't know if the colorists can really keep up with it or know what to do with it.
Well, not just that, but I think the inkers have different styles and they understand what they're doing differently. And so then you've got the cross hatching is differently, or the shading is differently. One of them obviously does not understand how to do faces. And so I would not be surprised if the cross eye came from the inker and not from the original art.
And maybe gotten rid of the detail that went into somebody's eyes, because I've seen the black and white sketch of Brian picking up that bomb guy, and you see his face where he's like, no, I didn't realize this bomb was going to go off. I saw the black and white sketch version of that. It was really nice to look at. I don't necessarily think that translates well into color, unless you get rid of all your rendering that you did in black and white. And that could possibly be why the eyes look really messed up, because they got rid of the detail that showed the skulls and the structures of the skulls that the people's faces were attached to. So I mean, I don't know. I don't know. It's just a theory, a game theory or comic theory.
So then Braxwell sees the eagle's nest kind of flying rapidly and kind of going down, and he's like, uh-oh, I need to go chase after that. Meanwhile, everybody on the ship is like, we need to evacuate, and the captain is like, I'm not leaving the ship, and Brian is like, I'm not leaving the ship, and the tech wizard is like, I'm not leaving the ship, I'm going down with the ship. Brian is like, I'm going to try to stop the ship because I'm not abandoning it.
But, oh man, like, well, evacuate, how?
So the thing is going down, and Wilkins is actually on the ground and sees this thing going down, while Braxwell and Brian are both completely useless in trying to stop it with the sheer force and will and power of their muscles. So then as Wilkins, the cop that has been doing stuff with Valdez this whole time, is looking at it and has his little electric abilities that he said was just a parlor trick because he never used it, now he just kind of goes beast mode and controls the thing to bring it down, and dies in the process of doing so.
Yeah, because he like short-circuited himself, I guess. But like we don't even actually see him stop it. It literally cuts, and then like the eagle nest is on the ground. It's crushed some cars, but it's not flown into like the precinct either. So like, and then they come over and they look at him. He's dead. Boo-hoo. It's sad. Not really. And then we cut to like a funeral scene. And the funeral scene, there's like a Texas flag draped over his casket. I'm like, I love Texas as much as the next person being a Texan, but for the love of God, please stop fetishizing Texas and making it completely anti-American. Please, it's not. Like, you always put an American flag over a soldier's, casket. And I think the same applies for police officers too. I'm not entirely certain, but I thought that was like offensive. I'm not necessarily a big fan of that. Like, I love Texas, but like Texas is not anti-American. We're very American. Like, that bothered me, but that's just what I think of that scene. But like, also it never really built up any real relationship to make that scene count. You were talking about it earlier. We got to the scene where he ends up dying after he uses his parlor trick to stop something that has to weigh about 1 billion tons from landing and hitting the precinct with his parlor trick, and I thought that was just like, okay, Deus Ex Machina for sure, like you had said. And his death didn't really mean anything because we didn't spend that much time with him in order to get to know. We don't even really get to know anybody in here, like I said. So
Yep. And so then after the funeral scene, we go over to Michael and Lillian as they are boarding a plane, a private plane, complaining about how they have lost to Alphacore, but this is not the end. Then the three main Alphacore members show up and say that you're under arrest because of all of these random business related things that we didn't see any of them collect information on. They're like, we've seen that this company is owned by this company, is owned by this company, is owned by that company, which is
and
owned
your
by
names are on the list. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, where did all of this come from? And they're like, well, if you don't have any actual proof to charge us with, then you can't stop us. And so they actually, they don't actually have the authority, and they didn't come with warrants. They didn't come with anything to be like, hey, we are holding you. I mean, they don't even say that technically, because she goes, you can't stop us. And so as they're going to go on the plane, Valdez like hits the wings of the plane, the engines of the plane with her light whip so that they can't take off. And then they walk away.
And that's the end of Alphacore.
Like, even if you were going to detain her to be like, hey, we're going to keep you for 48 hours or 3 days or however long they can keep you to ask you questions for whatever without evidence. All you just did was attack a private citizen instead of arresting them. Even if you had a warrant, you as a cop, if they're not arresting you, you have just violated their rights.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Of course, somebody might try to say, well, Texas is, removed from the United States now, and so it's its own thing. You never know what the law is going to be there. Yeah, true. I don't know what the fuck the law is.
Nobody
I just
knows
know the police
anything
can't.
is.
Yeah, anything is. It's like, well, yeah, like they just attacked a private citizen, and you're right. Like I looked back, I'm like, did they find evidence to prove that Michael and Lillian were involved?
Nope.
No.
They just suddenly know in this last scene.
Yep, that's it. Just to say, we know it's you, and then attack their private jet, and then blah, blah, blah. That's where it ends, just so Valdez can have, like, her moment to avenge Wilkins, or whatever his name is. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, but that you did not earn that. Like, nobody earned anything in this fucking comic to warrant her attacking, because you don't feel that much emotion for anybody or at all, or attachment to them. At least, I'm using emotion from my perspective and stuff like that. But it's just, it was very hard to get through. And I remember getting super annoyed that at one point I stopped with my notes because I was so frustrated with what I was reading, and then went on like a full-on bitch fest in my notes talking about how mad I was.
So now, as I'm looking at the notes, I have a totally random aside. Did this happen after the Great Separation War of Separation? Because in ISOM 2, we learned that during the War of Separation was when the Hell Monkeys came out, because they saw an opportunity to attack. And if the Hell Monkeys came out during the War of Separation, I know it's so stupid.
I'm sorry. Every time I hear it, I start laughing again. Because opportunism.
Yeah. Well, they were like, oh, look, the Texans are distracted. We can do whatever the Hell Monkeys freaking do.
Steal their oil fields.
So, like, did the Hell Monkeys attack during the Great Separation? Or if they did Alphacore people see those Hell Monkeys? Did people in the city where Alphacore is see those Hell Monkeys? Was that a contributing factor at all to Alphacore being formed? Because at this moment, from what we're looking at as Alphacore exists, the whole idea of the Hell Monkeys is so foreign. Like, nobody references it. It came out of nowhere in ISOM, and you would think that somebody, somewhere, would have memories, would have, like, maybe feel like hallucinations. I thought I saw this, or like, there's mythology in the history books, and maybe like it would be somewhere.
Yeah, and it doesn't mention it at all because, like, again, there is no comprehensive timeline at all. I don't know where we are.
So then that's what makes me go like, is this before that happened? Because would they be more okay with building Alphacore after the Separation War, when this crazy stuff was going on and nobody knew what was going on?
Yeah. I also have no clue.
This just opened a new can of worms, which has nothing to do with the rest of this book. But you're like, okay, so you got Alphacore and the War of Separation. Do other states have accepts? Do other states have accept groups that they have officiated by the government. Do
Well, we haven't.
do the other 49 states have their own accept armies, and could they use those accept armies against Texas?
Uh-oh.
Like,
Oh my gosh, you really did open up another can of worms.
like this doesn't have anything to do with this, but this is bigger world building issues. And so, like,
Yeah.
if we're looking at the government recognizes accepts, unless it's only Texas that knows accepts exist, which maybe, but if that happens, then
Maybe that's how
how
they
did
won.
Texas win this war?
I have
So-
no clue.
So like this stuff is obviously you don't have to answer this in like the first 4 issues, but this is stuff that if you're going to be doing a giant world building thing, you're going to have to keep in mind, or else the only thing that you can do going forward is going to be retconning in order to make it make sense.
Yeah, no, like I you're right. Exactly what you said.
Like it was mentioned earlier, you don't have to give everything away for your world building or your rules, but you should be able to see the characters in a story acting in a way that works with the logic, because the story, the universe in the story expands far past the moments and these characters that we're seeing. They have to live by these rules all of the time. And if you're not a creative person, or you don't abide by creative rules, or you don't normally read or, you know, do stuff outside of watching movies, you might think that it's silly to think of characters as living outside of the stories, but that's how they get the lore. That's how they get their rules that they live by. That's how they get their memories that are then implemented in the stories, and their values that happen off screen. Is your characters live in a world that is living even when you're not writing it.
Yeah, they do. And I mean, that's how some people ask, like, I wonder what this character would do in this certain situation. Like, it's all based on what you implement into their character and what you leave up for interpretation, or what you want people to know later on down the line. And for me, it's like, I think about my characters all the time, like all the time. Like, they're in my head all the time. I think about situations that I could put them in to see how they react, you know, and then writing them in the situations. And then, you know, there's a lot that goes into it. It's not just, you know, like give them a few basic character traits and then see what happens, and then plan for them to develop this way. It's all like very, you know, supposedly charted, when it's like, I think nobody really cares about anything that's going on in this Rippaverse stuff, because it's very evident that is the case. Like, there's no real attention to detail at all in terms of like characterization, or even the most basic concepts of world building. Like, I don't know anything about this world, and I can only assume it's like a receded Texas, because they mentioned a separation war and that Texas had won. And so I'm only going to assume that because Texas won, they've receded from the United States. But you bring up a larger point here. Well, other states receded. And if Texas receded, was it the entire state, or did they take more states with them? So has Texas then gotten bigger since the separation war?
Or does Texas have trade deals with other states that are receded? Like
Florida. Like, we remember those at the end of the first issue I saw, we saw the Viking guitar dudes. We have not heard from them. I know that's for another comic, but like, I'm not gonna lie, it was a little interesting. But you know, it's like, what's going on over there in Florida? You know, and the Yara thing is being built up. I know that that's what they're attempting to do, is build up Yara, and I'm sure it's going to be a fucking letdown, like all of the others have been, because there's not any superior writing on the teams. It's not anybody who fucking cares. So I don't know what exactly is going to happen, because this idea that this comprehensive timeline, this continuity thing, there is no continuity in timeline. We don't know where we are in time. Like,
so then there's one thing that Alphacore and ISOM have in common that I can think of. And that is, neither of them understand building a character to triumph.
No, they don't.
Because in ISOM 1, you had him go against that bodyguard, lose, did nothing, but beat him the second time. In this, you had Wilkinson introduced, be off screen most of the time, and then randomly show up at the end to be the savior and save them all.
Yeah.
Neither of those had a character arc that allowed them to build into triumph.
No.
They just did. It was like, oh, story is over, time to win.
If you imagine this in like a movie aspect, it just falls on its face too. Like, it falls on its face completely with any form of storytelling, excuse me. Like, it falls flat on its face. Like if this is a movie, it'd be a garbage, and it's a garbage product. I
Yep.
don't want to call the oh my god.
Speaking of garbage.
Speaking of garbage, and the artwork. I mean, what the fuck? Okay, her face. Wish I could zoom. Is it okay? But what is wrong here? Why are her eyes that far apart? Is she supposed to be Asian? Why is her eye like basically coming out of its socket? They're two different sizes. She's not attractive. That's what I'm talking about. Like they talk about, oh, we want beautiful women and sexy women. What the fuck is sexy about this? That looks like they got out of the fucking insane asylum in the 1960s. Now they're like really fucked up looking faces and stuff. And then we got this. Brian doesn't even look like himself. Like he looked like his nose is super fat, his lips are messed up, the sunglasses look like shit. Like he has barely any eyebrows, and then it's supposed to be shading or a black eye. And then we come over here and it's like the same, basically bad shading. This is why we're talking about the colors and the inkers. Like everybody was not on the same page. Nobody was. No. It was ridiculous. And then her face. Like I'm just picking out the ones that I found that were really random. Like what is this? Like, what is this? This is the girl that, like, they had to arrest because she robbed the fucking dollar store. And then this is supposed to be Wilkins with the buck teeth and the big beak nose. And then what's wrong with her eyebrows? Why does everything, like, what is going on? Like, I've never seen the likes of this. This just feels like a joke. That's when I first saw this, it felt like a joke. Like, is this a joke? Is this supposed to be a trap? Like, to see who the real fans are and who aren't, like something stupid like that. This was the first thing I saw. Like, where's her nose? You can still see the bulb of the nose. It may not have bones, but like you can still see it. They didn't know how to render it. She looks like she doesn't have any hair, and her ears are way too far down her face. They're supposed to be about right here, because it goes with the eyes, but they're way too far down her face, and her hand is really messed up. Like, it looks ridiculous. It ages them drastically, and they look fucking inhuman. Like, I'm so pissed off about this. Like, this is supposed to be an expensive comic book. This is supposed to be a so-called quality comic book that they want to give to their fucking fans, or, excuse me, their customers. Instead of because you're not necessarily a fan, you're just a customer when you buy into Rippaverse fucking products. You're not a fan, you're a customer, and that's it. At least to them. And then we have the Wicked Witch of the East over here going, like, it's just ridiculous. It's goofy, and it does switch up between styles. Where this one looks like it's more classic comic book from the 1960s, and then you go over here where it doesn't really look that way. You know, it's like this weird amalgamation, and then, you know, you keep going down, and then there's this. You have this ugly shot of him with Valdez fighting him. This is Galvin, for anybody who wants to know. It's like, looks like skin and bones. Like, he looks ridiculous. His hands look ridiculous. It's very exaggerated, and I don't necessarily... If the whole comic was like this, with every panel looked weird and unreal like this, I would not care this much. But it doesn't. It switches back and forth between being really, like, smooth to being really messy like this. And then you have this one right here. This is literally the next panel. The quality is vastly different. Like, the shading's better, the vibrancy's better, the colors are brighter. Like, I don't know if it's going for the fact that everything's changed, but, you know, this is the stuff I'd shown before. But, like, that's basically it. Like, it's pretty ridiculous.
And then one more thing to show.
Yes.
She has 6 fingers.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Yep, 6 fingers. What is that? That only happens with AI.
Or somebody who really doesn't care to clean up. Like, there is something going on here.
Something's really weird going on. This is not the first hand that we found that was deformed. If it had been just one, whatever. But there's a bunch of them that are like this. I didn't get all the hands, but I got the faces.
And that's somebody who, you know, been drawing almost semi-religiously for the last year, especially. You don't accidentally draw 6 fingers.
No, you don't.
You can accidentally not erase it very well if you're trying to position a hand. But when it gets time to ink, you don't accidentally draw 6 fingers.
No, you don't. And I don't even if it was a mistake, then how the fuck did they not erase it? You can accidentally draw 4 by mistake if you miscount the thumb.
And how do they have so many people working on this and
For
not
this
a
to be
single person QC'd this and said, whoa, what is that?
no, there's no quality control at all.
So you
Like,
want to
that's
brag about getting this out so quickly? What is this? Speed
what
does not excuse this. This is you saying, I am going to shit in a cup and look, it took me 5 seconds. Buy it. It's pretty much better than a freaking coffee from the store because I can make it faster.
Yep.
That's what you did here.
That's basically it. Not to mention, there are times whenever she's got gloves on and she doesn't have gloves on. Like, so many times. And this isn't the first freaking, like, hand we found that was fucked up and had more than one finger. An extra finger. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, but 14 people working on this, shame on you all. Fucking shame on you all. You know, there's no excuse.
So
period.
Going back to the way that I was introduced to this product was before ISOM 1 was released and seeing people call it an anti-woke comic. And that was what it was being sold with as the politics. And then also constantly being said, this is going to kill Marvel DC. Now, if you follow the conversations with a lot of this stuff, and I'm pretty sure I mentioned this in my video from a Saturday or two ago, because somebody said something about McDonald's doesn't help Wendy's and blah, 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 because so it's
so
like all against this stuff about like just sharing other people's stuff and then calling it all competition. This is not going to kill DC. If you have purchased this as something to fight against DC and kill DC, and Marvel, it is not going to kill them because buying Wendy's does not kill McDonald's. It has not killed McDonald's.
People still go to Burger King.
Cannot and will not kill Marvel and DC. If you like one, you will probably go and buy the other. And guess what? If you don't like some run that Marvel and DC is doing now, wait a year or two until they get a new writer for it. And you're probably going to go back and see what they're doing now. But Wendy's hasn't killed McDonald's, and Game of Thrones has not killed Brandon Sanderson, because what happens when people like something, especially in the creative field, is they go to try and find other people who are doing similar things. So if you've purchased ISOM and Rippaverse to kill Marvel and DC, you are a sucker because you're being scammed.
I mean, I can't think of any other way else other than this. Like, no, it's not going to kill Marvel and DC. Marvel and DC, for one, have been around for decades. Rippaverse, what? Couple years now. Yeah, it's gonna kill Marvel and DC. Get the fuck out of here. You're really that stupid? Like,
and I'm not trying to be mean by saying that you are a sucker and that you're an idiot for falling for this.
Oh,
I'm trying to wake you up.
Yeah.
Maybe with a shock that you have fallen for this. Because they don't care about you. They want your $800 that you spend every time they release something.
Oh my god, yeah, like, it's ridiculous. And now that we're on this topic, I definitely have a bone to pick, mostly because I am somebody who came from this community. I was formerly known as Sweet Pea. I don't know how many people remember that name, but I definitely palled around with people in the lower tier of the so-called Opiner group. And I remember when they first started, you know, and I remember one of the core tenets of what pretty much spurred all these people to do what they're doing, or what they did at the time, was not only was a most beloved franchise, Star Wars and others, being bastardized by really bad writers who didn't care about what, you know, what they'd been given or where it came from or what the creator's intention was, but they were also attacking fans who did not like the changes that were made because it went against the canon. And they were getting called all sorts of things, like homophobes, sexist, bigots, like, name it, like all the ists that you could imagine. It was uncalled for. And so these people rose up to basically challenge the mainstream movie industry that were creating crappy products, and called them out. But one of the core tenets, no matter how much you want to say, oh, it started because, like, oh, they were just tired of crappy products, fandom menace, and I don't care what the fuck anyone says, anything after Star Wars, the Last Jedi, is Fandom Menace. The people that spurred from that are Fandom Menace. That's where it came from. And now they have basically splintered off into their own groups and called themselves different things. They originally came from the fucking Fandom Menace, which is something else that Ethan Van Sciver coined. All right? And the core tenet was that you don't attack the fans. You don't attack your audience. You don't attack your customers, regardless if the customer liked it or not. And I see here in this stupid fucking Rippaverse ethic bullshit that doesn't mean a goddamn thing, where it says, respect the customer. We want you invested in this brand and everything that comes from it. Rippaverse Comics is not entitled to your money, and we must earn your support. It's on us as the creators to produce something that you find valuable and can remain invested in. It's impossible to please everybody, but we hope there's a book or character that you look forward to keep saying. The success of this company will be largely dictated by our ability to keep the customers interested and satisfied. We are not oblivious to this. Respect goes both ways, and we will honor our side of the deal. And they have not. In fact, I have seen people getting attacked by Eric July himself. I have seen his freaking legion of fans attack people. I've seen people like Az from Hill versus Babyface attacking fans and talking to them because they didn't like Rippaverse Comics, because Rippaverse Comics are bullshit. You guys were the people who said, don't attack the fans or the customers, the audience, whatever. Okay, so are only customers or fans or whoever, only certain ones not allowed to be attacked? The only ones that are like, are the people not, the people who are, you're not attacking the people who like your product, but the people who don't like it are the ones that you should be attacked because they're just haters. You invalidate their criticisms that way. And that means that all this bullshit that you guys have been throwing all this bluster at, throwing fucking criticisms and whatever at DC, Marvel, Disney, are invalidated because they can call you a hater too, because that's what you are to them, and that makes them right and you wrong. That is basically what you've done. You, like, it makes me so mad that this is what they have turned into. Like, it is. Coming from that community, I'm fucking furious. Like, there's no excuse. No excuse. He's gone against everything that he has ever said that he stood for. And excuse me for getting really mad or I don't know, but like, I've absolutely had it. They are partaking in the same behaviors that these freaking big wig blue ducks up in fucking Silicon Valley are doing.
Yep.
You know, you are the same people that you rail against all the time. You're no different. You just use different language. I said that in the last video. You use different language. Bad faith, gaslight, so, you know, like hater. There's another one, like you're a low end, like, I don't know, fuck, bottom feeder or something like that, because you're trying to like chase or, you know, ride the coattails of somebody else. It's just ridiculous. And most of it is, and if not all of it, is to avoid criticism.
Yep. And
that's all.
Say, don't criticize us or you're not going to have access. Don't criticize us or you're not real fans. Look, I feel like in the last 2-3 hours that we've talked about this book, we've put more time into thinking about variations of the story and how to give the characters personality. We have given Isam/Avery more attention to his character than he gets in his own freaking book.
Yeah.
And look, I'm sorry. I've been part of the creative field since forever, especially in the writing and the drawing situation, though I haven't really ever made my drawing public until more recently. But if you were in any of these fields, specifically visual arts and literary arts, unsolicited opinions are always going to find you one way or another. And I know that somebody is either new or not honest. Usually if you're new and you're an artist and you're used to, you know, you're invested in your stuff, you start crying if somebody criticizes your thing because that's a part of you and it feels like they're attacking you. But if you're in it for money, if you're in it for a business, if you see it as strictly a business, criticism ends up being responded to as you're trying to ruin my business. And
Yeah.
I've seen enough right to market authors who have asked me for feedback and then see my feedback and go, "You're trying to ruin my business."
Yep.
No, it's a book review. It's not trying to ruin your business. And so when I see people in this comic thing going, "Oh, you want to talk about my book? Well, you're criticizing my book, which means you're trying to ruin my business."
Hmm.
I'm talking about your comic book. That's what the arts are made for. That's what that's what anybody who creates actually wants the most out of their stuff, is to have other people talk about their creations, do theories, do criticisms, do loving the characters, something,
Yeah.
because that's what we're here for. But the
Yeah.
people that say you talking about my book, specifically in any sort of critical light, is you trying to ruin my business, are dishonest moneymakers. That's
That's
it.
all they are. That's all they are. They don't care, actually really care. You're not even a fan. You're a
Hmm.
customer.
And
You're
that goes back into why they say McDonald's versus Wendy's, because they don't see it as serving two different customers, because the people that like one thing are not necessarily going to like the other. It's also why they lack the ability to understand that people that like George R. Martin are probably also reading Brandon Sanderson,
yeah, or
because
like
they both like high fantasy, or why somebody who finishes reading Akatar and everything else in Sarah J. Maas's backlog are going on and finding as many other fae romances as they possibly can consume, because that's what they want right now.
yeah.
Those 25 million other fae romances are not taking away from Sarah J. Maas.
Oh, they absolutely are not. You know that. And the thing is, some people just like Wendy's, and some people just prefer McDonald's. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter. And that's where I'm just like, they're not helping each other. I'm just like, I don't think McDonald's and Wendy's need to help each other, because it's McDonald's and Wendy's.
Mhm.
It's not a creative thing. It's just a fast food. They're fast food chains. And like, I've sit here and say, like, how dare you come into this space and try to bully us? Get the fuck out. You don't really even belong here. You're just using people's anger and frustration with the way that things that they loved have been handled, and using it to profiteer yourself into a position of wealth.
Mhm.
And you don't even give them decent products for it. You don't tell them a good story. You don't give them good art. You just give them the most barely serviceable thing out there, and it makes me angry. And how fucking dare you? Like,
It's taking advantage of emotions. And like, if all of you boys who are getting something out of the Rippaverse because you're being emotionally validated by somebody else, I'm glad that you're getting therapy and you got your circle jerk to like rub your back and make you feel better. But you're not supporting the arts, and you know that. And you don't actually care about the arts. You care about the message. I've been told that as much. I've seen enough tweets in the last couple of weeks saying we don't care about indies. Indies suck. Specifically, I've seen a bunch of people involved in this saying indies suck.
and
And
they
it's not
don't even
about the
read
indies.
them.
It is literally just about your emotions, validating your emotions. And how are
Yeah,
you different than the people you've been criticizing for the last 10 years? Tell me that. I've never met anybody more sensitive.
exactly. I don't have an issue with my emotions. I don't mind getting, mad sometimes, because I feel like there's such a thing as justified anger. I feel justified right now, but I'm not going to continue to harp on it until the fucking cows come home. You know what I'm saying? Like, but this is a point where it's like all you're doing is consuming validation content. They do the exact same thing over and over and over and over and over again, and it's the same fucking thing over and over and over and over and over again until the cows come home. All right, and that's all you're not going there to learn anything new. You're going there to see somebody say something that's going to make you feel better about yourself. Yeah, somebody's on my side. Somebody's going to knock these freaking bigwigs down a peg. I want to be there and I want to feel good about myself. I'm like, dude, you're a fucking adult. Most of you are grown men. Some of y'all are in your freaking 40s.
I mean, that's not to say that it's unrighteous to be angry. That you're not in the right for being angry at
Yeah,
things from your childhood of being ruined. But you're not killing the people doing that.
no.
You're
It's a,
just having your feelings validated by other people who are angry, and they're telling you it's going to be okay. We're gonna beat the bad guys, champ. Just stick with me and we'll do it. And it's a lie to make you feel better, but you're hearing what you want to hear, and they're wiping your tears away,
yeah, and
and
I think that,
you're still angry, and it shows in all of your interactions.
oh, yeah, absolutely. For real. And I'm tired of saying it's like, guys, like, I'm not asking you to review every single fucking indie product there is or do what every single person who throws their project your way to promote them, but show a little courtesy to the people that you've been feeding off of for the last freaking 5-10 years now.
Or at the very least, just be honest about what your product is.
Exactly, just be honest, because I'm tired of people lying about it. But that's all I gotta say. My Alphacore was dog shit. Just worse than ISOM and ISOM 2.
I cannot believe that ISOM was better.
I can't
Now,
either. I'm still in shock.
Now, I would say I don't know how much of the art was better in Alphacore. The pages that were done by whoever, there was obviously the two different ones. The one that did the different line weights, at least some of the art was better than ISOM.
I
But
agree,
the ones
yeah.
where it was all freaky and had the heavy line weights and the heavy whatever, worse than ISOM.
I agree. And
Because
ISOM,
at least ISOM never had cross-eyed 6 fingers.
no, not at all. ISOM had everything was like great anatomy, stuff like that. But that's all I have to say. Excuse me for my my fiery, vindictive passion of. I'm just so fed up with it, you know. I'm just like, how dare you do this? Who do you fucking think you are?
Yep.
Like that's just how I see it. I'm like, yep, tale as old as time, man. Artists always get shit on. Tale as old as time. But that's all I gotta say for Rippaverse or Alphacore. I was about to call it Rippacore.
I was going to say until next time, because we will be doing ISOM 3, like we said earlier, and we'll be taking a look at Yaira. But after that, we're going to focus on doing a bunch of other comics that we find. But we also have other comics that we'll be doing between those. But we're giving the entry point for ISOM a chance. And we're giving 3 different creators that were hired to create the flagship of this, and then, Eric, their chances at leaving a mark and showing us what they can do. And so far, yeah, it's nothing. It's a product.
The fart in the wind.
So,
at this point.
I hope you like your expensive validation. With that said, thank you so much for watching. Let us know what you think. Have you read this book? Have you read Alphacore? Will you read Alphacore? What do you think of the art? Who is better? What would you like to see in the future? And with that said, have a great weekend and don't die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out? The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross. Is he in trouble? We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him. Cross isn't a killer. For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die. Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Way. Why? Did you do that? To the left, plain black letters read along the wall. You walked in the corridor. Once that ends, you chose the dark is on the right. My vision goes blurry, flickers black and black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore, but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?